Welcome back to part 12 of What If Naruto Was Told the Secret Behind the Shadow Clone Jutsu. Please remember to like and subscribe as it motivates me to upload more in the future, and as always link to the fanfiction is in the description. Chapter 34, I'm a Rappin' Man Fool. The trip from Konoha to Tatsu no Kuni was for the most part boring in the opinion of our blonde hero. Due to the fact that the person they were escorting was a daimyo, a rather portly man with slicked back black hair and a mustache, they were forced to carry a jiao, a human-powered transport that required 4 people to lift a portable chair, better room by holding onto the poles at their sides or on their shoulders. This one was covered up by a set of royal blue veils with golden designs running along them. Inside sat the daimyo of Kiba no Kuni, whom they could only see the silhouette of. Thankfully, Naruto had created cage buncheons to carry the jiao, allowing everyone to set themselves up around it as they walked. During that time Naruto had taken to speaking with Anko and the 2 perennial gatekeepers. In that time he had gotten to know the 2 very well, and had also managed to gain great joy out of scaring the holy hell out of them with Anko. He was glad to see that the 2 Chunin gate guards actually seemed to like him, unlike some of the Chunin and Jonin he had been forced to work with, though the number of ninja actually hating him was surprisingly small. Naruto was actually very interested in seeing Tatsu no Kuni. Having been forced to do a lot of studying after he graduated, Naruto had read much on the geography and history of various countries of the elemental nations. Tatsu no Kuni, while holding no shinobi village, was said to have the most powerful samurai force within the elementals. It was due to this reason that the country had been able to remain autonomous throughout all 3 of the great shinobi wars, and had an alliance with all nations that made it so when any nation attacked them, the others would have to come to its aid. While Naruto knew not to expect a fight or anything in the nation, he had high hopes that he could at the very least get a chance to see the country's samurai forces. When the group arrived in Tatsu no Kuni and was allowed entrance, they walked through the streets and managed to reach the hotel the daimyo had booked in advance. Unfortunately they had not been given rooms, and so Anko had been forced to get a few rooms in a much cheaper hotel, a few blocks away. Alright, since we're here I'm gonna allow us to take a load off. Anko turned to the 3 Chunin. I want 2 people staying outside the daimyo's room at all times. Anko grinned as she looked at Kotetsu and Izumo, who felt a shiver crawl down their spines, and since you 2 are so good at guarding, I've decided that you're getting first watch. Wah! The 2 Chunin barely had time to speak before Anko had grabbed Naruto's arms and began dragging him out of the hotel lobby. Come along, brat. We're getting some dango. Izumo looked over at his partner. Did she just dump us with guard duty? Looks like it, Kotetsu said with an imperceptible nod. Man, this sucks. Anko grinned as she looked at Naruto around a mouthful of dango. Nothing better than dango and red bean soup, brat. Naruto took a sip of his sake, sighing contentedly before he set it down and looked at Anko. Well, I won't deny that I rather enjoy a good platter of dango every once in a while. But I must confess to liking ramen much more. You just don't know how to enjoy the finer things in life. Anko shoved another stick of dango in her mouth. There is nothing better than dango. Obviously you have yet to realize that ramen is a far better dish than dango. After all, what can beat a food that has been gifted to us by the gods? Nothing. That's what. And once you taste the delectable noodles and smelled the heavenly aroma from the broth, you will realize that dango cannot compare to ramen. Anko narrowed her eyes at Naruto as their age-old battle seemed to come to the fore. It seems you're still not budging on this. I thought I had taught you better, but it seems like you need more lessons in order to understand that your noodly dish is nothing but a. The perplet was cut off from speaking when a dark-skinned boy a few years older than Naruto crashed into their table, knocking it over and spilling Anko's dango all over the floor. The boy groaned as he got up and Naruto saw that he had spiky white blonde hair and red eyes. He was wearing gray pants and a gray hoodie with a Kumo flak jacket over it as well as a Kumo headband on his forehead. The blonde also took the time to notice that he had a long katana strapped to his back. A few seconds later a young dark-skinned girl the same age as the dark-skinned boy came stomping out of a restaurant. She had long red hair and amber eyes. She had a bandana-style headband, a gray short-sleeved long dress, a Kumo flak jacket and a katana on her back. The dark-skinned boy rubbed his bruised cheek as he looked at his female companion. What was that for Karui? I didn't do anything. The now named Karui angrily shook her fist as she glared at him. Didn't do anything. You keep on running that overreactive brain of yours. If I have to hear you overanalyze something stupid like why grain sake tastes different than rice sake one more time, I'm gonna make sure you can't sit straight for a week. Throughout this little exchange between the two Kumo ninja, Anko had been deathly still as she stared at her knocked-over dango. She soon began to shake, something that the two dark-skinned ninja were unfortunate enough not to notice. In Konoha there were a few things about Anko that one learned to never do. The first was to never call her any derogatory names unless you were on her good side. This was something most of Konoha's civilian populace found out early on when a woman had called her a snake whore for a traitor and was seen in the hospital later that day with snake bites all over her body and her nipples looking like they had been bitten off. The second was don't ever try to get in her pants. Despite rumors, Anko was very selective when it came to who she slept with. The last man who had tried and couldn't take a hint had his balls bitten by a venomous snake and could no longer even get it up, much less reproduce. The last and most important rule about Anko was never, ever, mess with her dango. But all I said was "Gah." The dark-skinned boy suddenly found himself being constricted by several snakes that had wrapped around his torso and began constricting him. The snakes lifted him into the air and brought him face to face with a very pissed Anko. "I hope you're ready to feel a lot of pain, brat." Anko gave the boy a sweet grin that spoke of unspeakable horrors and made the dark-skinned boy shiver in fright. "Because these snakes of mine are going to give you the worst case of blue balls you'll ever see for what you did to my precious dango." Karui, seeing her teammate in danger, put a hilt on her sword only for Naruto to step in front of her and shake his head. "What the hell do you think you're doing, blondie? Get out of the way or all. I suggest you stop talking while you're ahead." Naruto interrupted as he sent a small dose of killing intent Karui's way to shut her up. "If you even try something, I can guarantee Anko will just make you suffer with him." He gave the dark-skinned girl a grin. "Fortunately for you, I know how to handle situations like this, so just stay out of the way and I'll get your friend out of the shit he piled on himself." Naruto walked over to Anko, who was torturing the poor boy by constricting her snake around him. He sighed, knowing this was going to be troublesome but also knowing that it was the only way to get her to stop from killing the Kumo ninja. He channeled chakra into his gauntlet, activating his claws as he slashed the snakes and forced them to dispel. Before the snake summoning Jonin could react, Naruto was in front of her, hands on her face as he forced her to look at him. "Anko ne-chan, what have I told you about attacking others for no reason?" He gave her a chiding look that one would expect a parent to give to a child. Anko did not appreciate the look at all. "No reason. No reason. That son of a bitch spilt my dango. How can you even think such blasphemous thoughts? My dango is ruined because of him. My poor dango. Oh geez, what the hell?" Naruto sighed as the woman actually had tears gathering in the corner of her eyes. It was often depressing to see just how much she loved the sweet dish. Trying to resist muttering a quick troublesome, he gave Anko a hug and gently patted her back. There Anko, it will be alright. I'll give you some money to buy some more dango. But, I'll have a cage bunch and give your dango a proper funeral too," Naruto interrupted, already knowing what she wanted to do from previous experience. The last time this had happened, she had a funeral service for her dango and had forced Naruto to attend. Her eulogy speech had been nearly an hour long and the blonde Hanyu had been hard-pressed not to fall asleep. Naruto pulled back and gave his Jonin leader some money. "Go buy some more dango while I talk to these nice Kumo ninja." Anko growled at the mention of the Kumo ninja but did as told. She grabbed the money and went back into the dango stand, but not before giving the boy who had been sucker punched into their table another growl. "I swear she's such a baby when it comes to her dango." Naruto sighed as he created a cage bunchin to throw away the dango before Anko got back. Then he walked up to the dark-skinned Kumo shinobi. "I apologize for my friend's behavior, Omoi," the boy answered as he popped a sucker in his mouth. "I appreciate the rescue, Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto." "Naruto," Omoi greeted with a nod of his head. "What the hell was that about?" Karui decided to butt in. Naruto turned to her and gave a sheepish smile. "My Jonin leader is a bit eccentric and oftentimes violent when people mess with her favorite food, among other things." The blonde looked at the two of them before he remembered a piece of information about the mission. "Are you guys the bodyguards for the daimyo of Ta no Kuni?" "How did you know that?" Omoi asked with a slight narrowing of his eyes. Are you here to try and gather information on our mission to make assassination attempt on the daimyo? Maybe you want to make Kumo look bad so Konoha gets more business. Or perhaps you want to try and find out more about Kumo by befriending us and asking about the mission, and then you'll try to steal our secrets. Or maybe, Naruto blinked as the man came up with more and more intricate plans on why he would ask about their bodyguard detail, which also began to sound more and more ludicrous as time wore on. Naruto looked back at Karui and hiked a thumb at Omoi. Does he always overthink like this? Karui sighed in a depressed manner. Yes, always. She blinked before narrowing his eyes at the blonde, though I do have to wonder why you were asking about something like our mission. You can't honestly think we would tell someone about that when they're not even from our village. Naruto rolled his eyes. Because I'm one of the escorts for the daimyo of Kiba no Kuni. And that means we're going to be partners on this mission. Karui blinked and was about to say something when another voice spoke up. Karui, Omoi, what are you two doing with this Konoha ninja? The three turned to see another girl about a year or two older than Naruto. She had light blonde hair that stopped roughly around the shoulders and like him had blue eyes, though hers were icy compared to his warmer colored ones. She was wearing a low-cut short skirt outfit with mesh armor underneath, and a short sword strapped horizontally across her lower back in what looked like a modified Kumo flak jacket that wrapped around her lower torso. Not that Naruto couldn't see why, the woman's chest was huge. Holy shit, I think her chest is as large as Ba-chan's, he thought, doubting that a flak jacket actually existed in her size. With much effort he kept his eyes on hers. Your friends got into a bit of trouble with my Jonin leader when Omoi here knocked our table over and spilled her dango on the floor. He was actually lucky that situations like this are fairly common and I was able to get him out of having his balls being eaten by her snakes. Omoi paled a bit at the thought, though Naruto was too busy focusing on the blonde before him to notice. The woman looked over at Omoi with a cool expression and upon seeing him nod she turned back to Naruto. I suppose some thanks are warranted, Mr. Ellipsis quote. Naruto. Uzumaki Naruto. The blonde grinned as he held out a hand. Pleased to meet you, miss. The woman looked at it for a while before nodding and taking it. Samui. Samui, Naruto grinned as he looked at the woman. I take it since you are from Konoha that you are with the group who has been partnered with us for this mission. It sounded more like a statement with her, but Naruto decided to answer it anyways. Yep, I'm with two other Chunin and my Jonin leader. Speaking of partners, you may want your friend Omoi to leave before Anko comes back out from getting her dango. Samui raised a delicate eyebrow but shrugged any curiosity she may have felt off and turned to Omoi. That is fine, I was actually coming here to get these two. Omoi, Karui, Kurabi-sensei wanted you two back for your shift. Hi Samui Taicho, the pair said before hustling off. Samui Taicho. Naruto looked amused by the title. Samui looked at him coolly and Naruto had to admit to being impressed by her somewhat blank stare. The woman was as cool as a cucumber. I am the one who is in charge when Kurabi-sensei is not around. She replied, deciding that there was no harm in informing him of something trivial like that. It's not like it was something that he could use against them and he would find out soon enough. That's cool. I wish I could get a kick-ass title like that. Something like Uzumaki-sama, or Naruto-senpai, the blonde shinobi sighed when his words did not get a rise out of the woman. I see, well it was nice meeting you Uzumaki-san, I will most likely see you again tomorrow when the negotiations are likely to begin. Feeling there was nothing left to say Samui turned around and followed the two dark-skinned Chunin. The next morning Naruto and the rest of the team he was on made their way to the meeting room that had been given to the daimyos so they could have their meeting. As they made their way there, he caught sight of the group from Kumo whom he had seen yesterday. Only this time their fourth member, and likely their Jonin leader was there. The man was large and muscular dark-skinned man with whitish blonde hair. On his shoulder was a tattoo with the kanji for Tatsu, and on his right cheek was a tattoo of bull horns. He wore oval-shaped sunglasses and a white headband. He had a modified Kumo flak jacket that only had one strap going over his right shoulder, a red rope tied around his waist, white handbands and a white scarf around his neck. The thing that caught Naruto's attention the most were the 7 swords strapped to his back. As the Konoha ninja walked up, the Kumo ninja seemed to notice and turned to look at them. However, they did not give any greetings until the Kiba no Kuni daimyo stepped into the meeting room where the Ta no Kuni daimyo was already waiting. I take it you're our partners in this mission. It will be nice workin' with you people. I hope it can be worked together without any dissin," the large dark-skinned man said as he stepped forward. Anko blinked at the man's strange way of talking but tried her best to shrug it off. "Right. Well, I guess since we're going to be working together we should do some introductions. Right, you little lady, and since an intro is a necessity, I'll go first so you'll know who is with me." The man grinned at them all as he pointed to himself. "I am the one who is known to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. I go by many names but you can call me Kurama." Samui sighed as she stepped forward. "I am Samui, and the two behind me are Omoi and Karui." "Oh yes," Anko purred, sounding similar to a snake as she looked at Omoi who gulped. "I remember you very well." Before the situation could go anywhere Naruto stepped forward. "I'm Uzumaki Naruto." He grinned at group. "Though, your students already know me. Anyways, the crazy lady who looks like she's about to eat your student Omoi alive is Anko, and the other two are Kotetsu and Izumo." Killer Bee looked at Naruto before smiling. "Uzumaki Naruto, huh? You know I saw your battles in the Chunin exams. You were killer, dynamite. I must say your battles were really out of sight. You were at the Chunin exams?" Naruto asked as he got a nod from the man. "Wait, Kurama. Do you mean you're Killer Bee?" "That's right, I am 80, Mr. 9, Killer Bee said while the other 6 people there looked confused. "So did a certain kitty cat tell you that?" Naruto was easily able to figure out who he was referring to and grinned. "She did mention you several times, saying how you were the Raikage's brother and had some killer rhymes." "That was a lie. Yugito hated his rhymes but she mentioned that it was a health hazard to make fun of them, at least to his face." The statement caused several different reactions from the other ninja. With the Konoha ninja it was slight fear at hearing that they were with the Raikage's brother, who after the battle in Konoha was over, became known as a Jinchuriki with perfect control over his Biju. For the Kumo ninja they face faulted at hearing someone else who had just rhymed like their sensei. Killer Bee on the other hand was looking at Naruto with a large grin as he held out his fist. Realizing what the larger man wanted, Naruto held out his own and bumped it with Killer Bee's. "You know our little kitty cat can't stop talking about you, Mr. 9, she seems to be quite taken in with you. Really thoughts of you seem to make her shine." Naruto's eyes softened a bit at hearing that. "How is Yugi-chan doing by the way?" Behind Killer Bee the 3 Kumo Chunin listened in with intrigued expressions. "Does this guy know Yugito-san?" asked Karui as she leaned into the other 2. "It is possible," Omoi pulled the sucker out of his mouth. "I mean she did go to Konoha for the Chunin exams. And Kurabi-sensei says this guy participated in them. Though from the way he's talking it sounds like that Uzumaki kid and Yugito-san are close." "They are." Karui and Omoi turned to see Samui looking at Naruto with slightly narrowed eyes, as if trying to analyze the blonde. "Yugito-san told me about how she met a real cutie as she called him. Though she refused to say anything else. The way they were talking she was positive that this, Naruto, was the one Yugito would always get that dreamy look on her face when she spoke of him. This would bear further investigating. And so this is him." Karui looked at the blonde boy in interest. Samui shrugged. "I would assume so. Man, that's so cool. I can't believe Yugi-chan got promoted to Jonin right off the bat." Naruto looked disgruntled as B gave him that piece of information. "I wish I got promoted to Jonin." B just laughed. "Take your time, Mr. 9, there's no need to rush things or you may be dead before your time. I guess." Naruto tilted his head before turning back to Anko. "So how are we going to do this?" It took several moments for Anko to realize Naruto was talking to her. Having been too busy staring at the pair of Jinchuriki who seemed to just click, she figured it must be a Jinchuriki thing. When she did, however, she stepped forward. "I figure that it would be a good idea for us to split up in groups of 2, with a Konoha ninja and a Kumo ninja on each. That way we won't have any form of mistrust on this mission, since we'll have a member of each village to watch the other." "I have to agree that is right, so we'll do it that way and this will help make us tight." B seemed to agree, in his weird, rapping way. "We'll have to split up and walk around, that way we'll cover more ground. I think it's time we get ready and pick our partners." Killer Bee looked at Anko. "Since you're in charge of these Konoha fools, I'll go with Chu. I hope that sounds cool." "Ah, that's fine I suppose," Anko responded, though she was a tad freaked out by his rapping. She could only thank the high heavens he was not in green spandex. In that case I'll go with Samui. Naruto walked up the large-breasted blonde and smiled at her, if that's alright with you. Samui nodded, that is fine. Kotetsu and Izumo ended up working alongside Karui and Omoi respectively. After that the two Jonin gave the Chunin their orders on where their patrols would lead them while they stayed to guard the entrance. Naruto and Samui had ended up patrolling the left side of the meeting hall, keeping an eye out for anything suspicious. Honestly, Naruto did not know why the daimyos even bothered hiring ninja for something that was so mundane. It's not like anyone was going to try to steal something of that belonged to them or hold them hostage anyways, their countries weren't all that important in the grand scheme of things. Though he knew he was probably just complaining because he was bored. He looked over at his partner for the moment. He still did not know much about her, not that she was very talkative. The woman was about as cold as ice. He had tried making casual conversation with her but she had rebuffed all of his attempts with statements like, talking about personal matters while on a mission is highly inappropriate, or some other crap like that. Naruto sighed as he focused more of his attention to the task at hand. No matter how boring it was he still had a job to do. Little did Naruto know that Samui, despite her continuous rebuffs of any and all forms of communication that did not have to do with their mission, had taken to glancing at the blonde out of the corner of her eyes. I wonder if this really is the guy who Yugito-san seemed to be talking about. She looked him up and down as she tried to get a read on him. While she was not as good as some at reading people based off of things like movement and facial expressions as Yugito was, she had been taught how to do it. As a kunoichi that kind of thing was important for the infiltration and assassination missions they were sometimes assigned. However, getting any kind of read on Naruto was a task in and of itself, at least now that they were actually working. Despite his attempts at conversation with her, he kept his face for the most part blank, with only the occasional boredom flickering through his eyes. Add on to that was his state of dress. Samui could not see anything other than the large black cloak he wore over his clothes and the steel-toed boots. Because he was so thoroughly covered she could not even determine what kind of person he was from his walk. Damn it, this is so boring, Naruto grumbled to himself. Hey Q-chan, are you awake? He heard a yawn in his mind, signifying that Kyuubi had probably been asleep. What is it Naruto-kun? Something wrong. No. I was just bored. Sorry if I woke you. Kyuubi stifled a small laugh that threatened to escape her. It's perfectly alright, you know I'm always willing to make time for you. It's not like I have anything else to do in this seal. She paused for a moment as she took stock of where Naruto was and what he was doing. It doesn't look like you need me for anything. Is there something you want to discuss? Well, no. I was just bored. Kyuubi finished with a soft laugh. Naruto had to fight down an embarrassed blush at being called out on that. It seemed Kyuubi was getting to know him fairly well within the past 4 or so months they had started talking. It was a definite improvement to how they had pretty much hated each other at first. You don't always need to be doing something Naruto-kun. You really do need to learn how to take some time off and just relax. Even Kyuubi knew how to relax, not like there was anything else to do while she was sealed. Hey, I know how to relax. Naruto cried out indignantly. Oh. Naruto could almost picture the vixen in his mind raising a delicate eyebrow while giving him a small grin. When was the last time you just let yourself rest even when you didn't need to? Or the last time you went to the hot springs just because you wanted to? Had it not looked odd for him to do so, Naruto would have puffed out in cheeks in indignation. However, since Kyuubi would not see it, and Samui would probably wonder what the hell he was doing or if he had lost his mind, he simply settled to giving what amounted to a mental glare. I went on that date with Ten-chan, didn't I? That could be considered relaxing. And what about all that time I spent with Gaara and Mari-chan in Suna when I escorted them back, huh? Kyuubi frowned for a moment as Naruto mentioned Tenten and Temari. However, she did not let any of what she was feeling enter her voice. Your date with Tenten was just that one time. And what about your time with the blonde and her Jinchuriki brother? That was a mission, wasn't it? It was kind of your job to be with them, and it's not like you would have truly been allowed to train during your stay there. And even then, you still wound up doing some form of training with Temari. Naruto pouted a bit at that but could not deny the truth of her words. Of course, if he did not have to worry about a group of S-ranked criminals coming after him, he would probably take some time off to relax. Whatever, relaxing is for pussies anyways. I'll relax when I'm dead. As her fellow blonde was holding a riveting conversation with his inner demon, Samui watched as various emotions played over his face, those emotions ranging from amusement and indignation among a few others. Shaking her head, the blonde woman tried to clear all thoughts of curiosity from her mind as she started paying more attention to her mission. I can ask him some questions later. A little ways away from the building, 4 figures stood and watched the patrolling ninja. So should we attack them? Asked one of the ninja, his voice raspy due to the breathing apparatus attached to his mouth. No, not yet, we'll wait until they drop their guard before attacking, said the leader of their team. I say we just attack now, another one of the people said. They don't look so tough. We're outnumbered 2 to 1, and that dark-skinned man is Kumo's famed guardian. Facing him head-on is tantamount to suicide. The leader scolded, no, we wait until they drop their guard, then we separate whoever is guarding the daimyos at the time from the others. 2 days came and went and the daimyos still seemed to be having problems with whatever they were trying to hash out. Since nothing had happened to jeopardize their lives so far, and the only mildly interesting thing to happen was a pickpocket who was stupid enough to try and steal from the Kiba no Kuni daimyo. Anko and Karabi had decided that protection detail would be done in shifts, that way everyone could spend some time exploring the city. Naruto grinned to himself as he walked around the city. The place was fairly large and there was a lot to explore. The blonde had found all sorts of shops that sold blades of the same if not better quality than the Higurashi weapons store. He had even indulged on a small short sword that was made of a powerful chakra-conductive metal, a rarity that was only found in Tatsu no Kuni. The blade was actually two-sided unlike the standard kodachi. The hand guard was a dark blue and flared out in what looked like an odd pair of eagle wings. In the center of the guard was an eagle eye, really it was a golden orb with black dot in the center making it look like a pupil. The hilt was wrapped around in blue leather, and the pommel of the blade held an eagle claw with a clear blue gem. Naruto had learned that in the hands of a master samurai the blade could produce powerful chakra-based attacks that were on par with some A-rank jutsu. Other than that, he had just walked around, looking through the shops. He had found a small something for some of the girls he knew, figuring they would like a nice gift. Halfway through the day Naruto had found a small cafe and gotten himself a cup of tea. As he was drinking his tea, 3 people sat down at his table. Looking up, the blonde found himself staring at the 3 Kumo chunin who he was partnered with for the mission. Can I help you? Samui opened her mouth to speak, however she was cut off by Karui who spoke in her usual blunt fashion. How the hell do you know Yugito-san? While Omoi slapped himself and Samui pinched the bridge of her nose, Naruto blinked a few times. Is it not obvious? Karui, seeming to take that as an insult, turned red in the face. Not that Naruto noticed since he continued speaking. I met her during the Chunin exams. Her friend fought against a kid named Hyuga Neji during the prelims and was about to be killed. Thankfully, I managed to rescue her and I guess I just piqued her interest. So she came onto you. Samui sounded intrigued. Naruto blushed a bit. Well, I don't think she necessarily came onto me or anything. I had been told that she had visited me in the hospital after my battle with Gaara, a ninja from Suna, and I decided to visit her and see why she had gone to visit me. He shrugged a bit. We just sort of hit it off after that. You must be strong if Yugito has taken an interest in you, Samui commented lightly, trying to judge just how strong this boy was. Well, I'm alright I suppose. Naruto went for a modest answer, not that he actually had any modesty. He just didn't want to seem arrogant in front of foreign ninja. I was good enough to get promoted to Chunin, so that's saying something at least. Karui snorted. I don't see why Yugito-san is interested in this kid. I mean, he doesn't look like much. In fact, he looks kind of weak. Come again? Naruto asked, standing up and glaring at the girl. Perhaps you'd like to get some first-hand, up-close and personal experience to see how strong I am. I can guarantee that I can kick your ass. Keep himself modest be damned. He was going to shove his foot up this girl's ass if she kept up with that mouth of hers. What was that? Karui growled, standing up and forcing Omoi to grab a hold of her. You wanna go, punk? Rather than look angry at this, Naruto looked amused. You want fight me? Seriously? The blonde Konoha shinobi snorted, "Woman, I would kick your ass so badly your grandchildren will feel it." Karui growled at the blonde, "That's it. It's on now. I'm gonna beat you to a pulp." The hot-headed girl began stomping off. However, when she noticed no one was following her, she turned back and scowled at them, "Get moving." Naruto looked at Omoi and then Samui as if to say, "Is she fucking serious? We might as well just follow her," Omoi said after a while. "It's almost impossible to get her to do anything when she's like this." Naruto ran a hand through his hair. "Fine, I was getting bored with all this goddamn monotony anyways." They came upon a large clearing a few miles outside of the city. Naruto grinned a bit at the thought of getting some excitement in. He looked over at his opponent who was glaring at him. "So how are we gonna do this? Are there any rules to this little spar of ours? There will be no crippling or killing blows. This will be a Tai and Kenjutsu match only," Samui said, sighing at the situation they were now in. "I suppose I'll be the judge of this match." She looked at Naruto and Karui, one whom was in a fighting stance and the other who had her sword out. Hajime. Almost as soon as the battle started, Naruto appeared right in front of Karui, aiming a jab at her head. Said Kumo Kunoichi eyes widened as she reacted on instinct and slashed at the hand. However, Naruto proved to have quick reflexes as he brought his hand back, letting the sword pass through nothing but air. Not having expected to hit nothing, Karui's sword overswung where her target had been. This allowed Naruto to plant a kick in her torso. Karui's eyes widened as she let out a breathy, "Oof," and skidded back several feet. She rubbed her ribs, which felt like they had cracked from the attack. Looking up, she saw her blonde opponent looking at her with disinterested eyes. That seemed to rile her up again, and despite the creaking in her ribs she rushed back in. Naruto dodged an overhead swing from Karui's blade, and then jumped back as she slashed at him. During the redhead's assault, Naruto made sure to judge her swings, timing them to see how long his window for a counterattack was. When he felt he had gotten the timing down, he waited for the next swing before striking. Karui made a downward slash that Naruto sidestepped, right before he brought a foot down on her blade, sending it into the ground. Naruto kept a foot on the blade, making sure Karui could not pull it out. Almost at the same time, his two fists flew out from his cloak, hitting the red-haired girl in the solar plexus and the stomach. Karui folded over like a cheap lawn chair, coughing up spit and a bit of blood as she held onto her stomach and tried to regain her lost breath. After several seconds, the redhead felt ready to stand but could not when she found a blade pointed at her throat. "I believe this battle is mine," Naruto stated, looking over at Samui. Said woman nodded and let Naruto claim victory. Naruto pulled his blade away from Karui and allowed her to stand. "Damn it, I can't believe I lost so easily." Karui rubbed the two spots where Naruto hit her, knowing they were going to be bruised the next morning. "That's what happens when you underestimate an opponent." Naruto gave an uncaring shrug. "Not so bad for someone who looks really weak, right?" Naruto sighed while Karui glared at him. "Anyways, I'll catch you guys later. Chances are Anko and B are looking for us." Tossing a parting wave over his shoulder, the blonde Konoha shinobi left the three Kumo Chunin. "I guess he's a lot stronger than you thought," Omoi said as he popped a sucker in his mouth. "This is what happens when you run off at the mouth so much. Perhaps you should learn to think before you speak, it may help keep things like this from happening again." "Shut up, Omoi," Karui yelled, wincing a bit as she felt the stinging in her stomach. "I'll admit he's stronger than I thought, but I only lost because I underestimated him. Next time I'll get him." Omoi just shrugged, not sure whether he believed she could win or not. He turned to their blonde teammate and leader. "What do you think?" Samui rubbed the back of her neck as she watched the spot where Naruto had left. "I think Yugito was right. He is pretty cool, and cute. I wonder if he gives good massages." Karui's eyes widened as she turned to watch her female teammate walk off. "She can't be serious, can she?" The redhead turned to look at Omoi. "Can she?" Omoi just shrugged as he patted her on the shoulder and left, making Karui follow him, still shouting. The rest of the mission went by easily enough. Thought that was after Naruto had gotten scolded for picking a fight with their joint team. Naruto had ended up guarding the daimyo all of 2 times, and the rest of his time was spent exploring the city, or hanging out with his apparent new friend Samui. The blonde female seemed to have taken a bit of a shine to him after he had defeated Karui with minimal effort. In fact, almost immediately after his spar, if you could call it that, with Karui, she had managed to find him and surprised him with an unexpected request. Flashback. Several minutes after kicking Karui's ass. Uzumaki-san. Naruto turned around when he heard the voice and saw Samui walking towards him. Can I help you with something, Samui? You're not mad that I beat your teammate, are you? Samui stopped in front of him and shook her head. No, I'm not mad. Karui tends to overreact to things and is very quick to anger. She gave a small bow. I would actually like to apologize on my teammate's behalf. Naruto blinked a few times before grinning. There's no need for you to apologize. Hell, there's no need for Karui to apologize. I was getting pretty bored anyways, and there's nothing like a fight to get the blood pumping. Samui looked at him oddly for a second. So you're not angry at Karui or anything? No, why should I be? Naruto shrugged. I'm not one to care about things that happen in the past too much. Besides, I'm pretty sure she's learned her lesson, and if she hasn't. Naruto gave the blonde a grin. Well, I suppose I'll just have to kick her ass again. You're a very strange person, Uzumaki-san, Samui commented. Yugito-san was right about you. Naruto scratched the back of his head and adopted a look of confusion. Yugi-chan's been talking about me. What has she told you? Yugi-chan. Samui filed his nickname for Yugito away as she answered his question. Just a few things about yourself. She told me that you were very strong even though you've only started your shinobi career recently. And she told me you were very kind, friendly, sweet and very cute. What is it with the whole cute thing? I don't want to be cute. Naruto mentally ranted, why his fellow blonde Jinchuriki insisted on calling him cute rather than giving him a more appropriate and manly description. Was beyond him. His right eye gaining a small twitch as he heard Kyuubi laughing in his mind. So does she talk about me often? She does on occasion, Samui said. I get the feeling she misses you. Naruto's eyes softened a bit at that as he felt a small warmth that spread throughout his being. I miss her too. He paused when he noticed Samui narrow her eyes very slightly, and got the feeling that he might want to switch subjects. So is there anything else that you wanted to talk about, Samui? No, well yes. Samui paused and for a second looked unsure about herself before taking a deep breath and plunging in. I was just wondering if you wanted to hang out with me during some of our free time on this mission. Well, that was unexpected. Naruto looked at her for a few seconds as his mind registered what the young woman had said. When he did, he gave the girl a megawatt smile. Sure thing. It would be nice to spend some time with a beautiful girl like you. When Naruto said that, Samui's eyes widened just a tad, before a blush spread across her face. It wasn't much, just a small line of pink that tinted her cheeks, but it was enough that Naruto, who had been getting more experienced when it came to dealing with women, noticed. Thank you, Uzumaki-san. Naruto held up a hand to interrupt her. Please, enough with the formalities. I really hate honorifics like that. If you have to call me something, just call me Naruto. Samui nodded and Naruto saw a small, almost imperceptible smile on her face. Okay, Naruto-kun. When we get some free time, come over to the hotel I'm staying at. She reached into a pocket on the inside of her vest and pulled out a small piece of paper. Naruto watched Samui leave with a small sway of her hips before turning his eyes on the ripped sheet of paper she had given him. Opening it up, he saw that it contained the name and address of the hotel she and the other Kumo ninja were staying at. He chuckled a bit before pocketing the paper and heading back to his room with a large grin on his face. Flashback end. It was 2 days after that when he and Samui went on their date. Samui had taken him to see a movie, one of the first Princess Gale movies done by the actress Fujika's Yuki. The woman's choice of movie had actually surprised Naruto, who had not expected a movie that was heavily based in fantasy and romance to be something a woman like Samui would like. Not that he was going to complain. However, while Samui asking him on a date was surprising but not completely unexpected, or more like, he had somewhat come to expect things like this to happen given the amount of times he had been asked on a date by other girls. What happened the day after his spar with Karui was. Flashback. Naruto blinked a few times as the memories of the Kage Bunshin he had sent on patrol came back to him. He was not surprised when they reported nothing. He looked over at his partner for the day, Karui, who was currently looking off into space, a look that was a sharp contrast to her hot-headed self yesterday. He looked away from the redhead and resisted a sigh. After he had come back yesterday, Anko had given him a half-assed verbal lashing about proper conduct when working a joint mission. Not that she was really into scolding him. Naruto had gotten the impression that she was more upset at the fact that he had beaten one of the people they were working with and just did not invite her to see it. Hey, Naruto. Did she just call me by my name? Naruto wondered as he looked over at Karui, who was currently turning her head away from his. Yes, Karui. Karui bit her lip before sighing in exasperation. Look, I'm sorry for being rude the other day, okay? I didn't mean to upset you or anything. Naruto tilted his head to the side as he looked at the redhead. He was actually surprised she would apologize to him. He may not have known her for more than a few days or so, but he got the impression that she never really apologized for things like this. Still, it would not do to say nothing. Meh, it's alright. I actually have to thank you. When he noticed Karui giving him an incredulous look, he grinned. This job was getting pretty boring, nothing exciting has happened yet. So I have to thank you for breaking my boredom. Karui looked at him for a second longer before giving a tentative smile. You're welcome, I guess. There were a few more minutes of silence after that until the redhead decided to speak up again. Hey Naruto. When said blonde turned his attention back to her, she flushed just a bit. She was incredibly thankful that it would be hard to see on her dark skin. I was just wondering if you wanted to spar with me again sometime. Naruto's mouth opened for a second, surprised by the request. I somehow get the feeling this is her equivalent of a date. He resisted the heavy urge to sigh. I really shouldn't be so surprised anymore. I would like that. Guard duty is pretty boring, and also having a sparring partner during our little bit of free time would be nice. Karui grinned after that and began to actually talk to him. Flashback end. He had sparred with Karui once after that, though it was much later at night so they would not get caught. It seemed she had been scolded by her sensei as well. He had also learned a bit more about her. It turned out that she and Omoi were actually related, which Naruto felt he should have realized from the way they were constantly bickering. He was shaken from his thoughts as a large explosion took place on the opposite side of the building. He turned to Samui. Go find either B or Anko and get them back here. What about you? Asked Samui, not used to being ordered around like Naruto was doing. And why can't you just send a clone? I need to make sure the daimyos are alright. And if I sent a clone it might get dispelled, they only last one hit after all. Fine, Samui sighed, she knew he was a better fighter than her anyways. Just be careful, okay? Naruto gave her a grin. Hey, it's me. That's what I'm afraid of. Samui shook her head before running off. Kasumi Jusha no Jutsu, mist servant technique. Anko frowned as she watched what looked to be several hundred clones of a person climb out of the ground as if made of some kind of muddy substance. The figure was wearing a light tan straitjacket-like jumpsuit, a breathing apparatus, and had a Megakure headband. What the hell is going on? Anko wondered out loud as she looked around herself. Who the hell are you? All the figures gave an eerie chuckle. I'm the person who's going to be killing you today. Anko shrugged off the ridiculously small amount of killing intent and gave the clones a bloodthirsty grin. You think you can kill me? Well, let's hope for your sake that you can, otherwise I'm going to take a lot of enjoyment listening to you squeal. Kasumi Jusha no Jutsu, mist servant technique. At the same time that Jutsu was called with Kurabi and his two students Karui and Omoi. They watched as the clones came up from the ground, with the two Chunin looking at the Hachibi Jinchuriki. This is a most interesting technique, yo. Looks like these are all copies of the original fool. Kurabi pulled two swords off his back, prompting the two to do the same. My raps are hip, my rhymes are sweet. I hope you dudes know what you're getting into, cause the killer bee can't be beat. Omoi, Karui and all of the clones' sweat dropped. Katetsu growled in frustration as he cut through another one of those clones, only for it to reform as if nothing had happened. What the hell are these things? Why won't they die? He hacked a clone, each word in emphasis, biting back a scream of frustration when the clones all reformed. Hey, chill man. Izumo tried to calm his comrade down as he sliced off the arm of a clone, frowning when the wound became covered in that murky substance and healed up. And stop swinging that thing around so recklessly. You might end up taking my head off rather than your enemies. Sorry about that, man, but these things are pissing me off. Nothing seems to work. To emphasize his point, all of the clones he had just hacked to pieces reformed and charged back at him. Konoha-san. The two gate guards took a moment to look towards the center of the voice to see Samui running into the midst of the clones, hacking them apart with her blade. Have you two seen Kurabi-sensei or Anko-san? Samui asked as she got near them. Kotetsu and Izumo looked at each other before getting back to work. No, we haven't. Samui narrowed her eyes, the only sign of her frustration that she allowed to show. I see, and if things are like this for you then they are likely the same for the others. She readied her blade, so it seems we will need to get through these things and find the real one before linking back up with our teammates. That seemed to be the gist of it, Kotetsu said. Right, Samui sighed as she and the two Konoha Chunin readied themselves for a fight. Chapter 35, Battles. Is this really a battle? When Naruto got over to the other side of the building, it was to see a person standing in the room where the two daimyos were. The blonde sighed in relief when he saw that the daimyos were unharmed, minus the small disorientation they likely felt from the explosion. After that he turned his attention to the other figure in the room. This person had brown hair that went to his shoulder in an odd-looking mess, with purple eyes and an aim Hittite on his head. He was wearing a black bodysuit with white stripes on the sides that went into a pair of shinobi sandals. Both arms had white bandages on them, but his left also had an arm band, while his right had a black glove. Strapped around his left shoulder was a bandolier that seemed to holding what looked like an umbrella behind him. It took a while, but Naruto was able to place a name to the man's face, but when he did he sneered at the man. Rokusho Aoi, a rank missing ninja wanted for stealing the Raijin no Ken. Aoi, who had been facing the daimyos and looked like he had been about to kill one of them, turned around and smirked at him. If it isn't one of the little Konoha ninja here to protect the Kiba no Kuni daimyo. Listen kid, if you know who I am then you'll know you have no chance against me. Just let me get what I came for and I'll be on my way. Naruto narrowed his eyes before smirking. Just let you go. You must be fucking brain dead if you think I'm gonna let you go with the bounty on your head. And since you were kind enough to fall right into my lap, I'm collecting that bounty. Aoi sneered, you think you're of the same caliber of shinobi that I am. Very well then, if you think you can take my bounty then come and try. He pulled out the Raijin no Ken and activated it with a snap, letting the yellow lightning bolt-shaped blade sizzle and crackle as it ignited. Grinning at the prospect of beating the crap out of the traitor, Naruto unsealed the new blade he had gotten in Tatsu and began channeling wind chakra around it. He made liberal use of the shunshin to get behind Aoi and aimed a jab for his neck. Anko growled in frustration as she continued slicing through the clones. She had learned from trial and error that the real person was hiding somewhere. He would only come out when he felt he had a distinct advantage. This had happened a few times when Anko had let her guard down, and the AIM ninja had come up from the ground using Mogaragakure no Jutsu and tried to slice her Achilles tendon. Since then she had not let her defenses slip. However, Anko knew she could not hold out forever. Whatever this technique the AIM ninja was using obviously required very little chakra, since he had been holding it up for an hour or two. It was times like these she wished she had an Inuzuka nose or some way to track down her opponents. Anko continued slicing through the ink-like clones even as she finally began slowing down. Eventually she found herself completely exhausted and had to lean against the wall for support. It was then that the creator of these clones revealed himself, coming out of the ground and standing in front of her. Even though Anko could not see it, she knew he was grinning beneath his mask. "Ha, it looks like you Konoha shinobi are just as weak as our sensei claimed," the AIM genin gloated. He was definitely right to leave your sorry excuse for a village. Though I must admit you are a fine specimen, he looked her up and down. Therefore before I kill you I think I'll do you a favor and let you suck my what. The AIM ninja watched in shock as Anko dissolved into mud. He would have tried to get away as he realized that the snake mistress had tricked, but before he could even so much as move a kunai lodged itself in his throat. He gurgled before falling down, the light fading from his eyes. Anko appeared behind the ninja and stared at the corpse dispassionately before burning it with a Kaiden jutsu. She looked around and noticed that sometime during her fight all of the civilians had gotten off the streets. Good, less people to get caught in the crossfire means less paperwork I'll have after this is all over, she thought to herself. If there was one thing Anko hated more than anyone, besides people stealing, dropping, touching or even talking bad about her dango, it was paperwork. Shrugging the thoughts away, she jumped on the roof and began heading towards the building where the discussion between the daimyos was taking place. Arg, these people are beginning to piss me off. Karui shouted as she hacked and slashed her way through the inky clones with a vengeance. Not that it did much good, as they would just come back and reform as if nothing had happened. Calm down, Karui, we need to think about this logically if we want to have any hope of beating this jutsu, Omoi said as he fought off a horde of the clones. They were rather weak, but more than made up for it with numbers, and the fact that they didn't seem to die was irritating to say the least. Omoi is right, yo. We've got to think about this calmly or we'll never know. B spun around the clones and sliced through them all like a buzz saw, barely even visible to the others who were fighting. Eito says there's a chakra signature hiding in the building to the left, let's find who it belongs to and beat him for being a pest. I thought I told you not to call me Eito B. The Hachibi grit its teeth in annoyance from within the seal. B ignored his tenant for the moment as he watched his two students replace themselves with a pair Rai Bunchins and sneak into the store the Hachibi had located the chakra signature. Less than a minute later the clones dissolved and Karui and Omoi came back out with the corpse of an AIM ninja. Man, that was easy, Karui commented as she threw the now dead ninja on the ground and destroyed the body with a Raiden jutsu. I can't believe how weak that guy was after giving us so much trouble. Now that they were out of danger, Omoi took out a sucker, unwrapped it and stuck it in his mouth. What are you talking about, Karui? He was obviously weak from the way he had tried to defeat us, hiding in the shadows and using an illusionary clone technique like that. He probably hoped that we would eventually tire out and he could kill us. Perhaps he planned on having, oof. Omoi was sent flying as Karui smashed her fist in his face. Shut the hell up, Omoi. I'm sick of listening to you overthinking everything. Hey little red, you need to chill out before you burst yo head. Kurabi tried to calm down his student. She turned a glare on him but he ignored it. Now let's find the others and make sure they ain't dead. Last thing I need is for big bro to have my head. Samui frowned as she, Katetsu and Izumo continued cutting through and destroying the clones. While she was keeping calm on the outside, on the inside she was getting aggravated. Every time one of them destroyed a clone it burst into an ink-like substance before reverting back to its original state. She could tell from the fact that none of them seemed capable of doing any real damage that they were more illusionary than anything, and that the real person was most likely hiding. But she was unsure how to get them to reveal themselves. Man, this is actually starting to get a little boring, Katetsu commented as he cut off the head to one of the clones, watching as the ink-like substance crawled up its skin and reformed the head. I know what you mean, these things are so weak but they just keep coming back. Izumo stabbed one of the inky clones through the heart with a kunai, grimacing as he pulled out his hand and saw it covered in whatever the hell this stuff it was made out of was. These things are kind of disgusting too, I wonder what they're made out of. Can you two please stop talking? Samui grunted as he sliced two clones in half. Unless you have a plan for finding the creator of these things, then please be quiet and let me think. Fine. You know, you sure are bossy. Katetsu quieted down when he saw her glare at him. Samui racked her brain as she tried to find a way to find the original. She was fairly positive that he was here somewhere, since jutsu like this usually required the caster to be within a specific distance from where the jutsu was being used. The problem was finding them. She was not a tracker, and from what she could tell of the two ninja with her, neither were they. Fortunately, the situation was taken out of her hand when all of the clones suddenly dispersed, dissolving into an inky black substance. What the? Izumo looked around before spotting a figure approaching them. Hey! Anko called out as she walked towards them carrying the now dead AIM shinobi over her shoulders. Were you three looking for this? She threw the body at their feet. Anko-san, Samui greeted with a slight nod of her head. Have you seen Kurabi-sensei and the others? Not today, no. Anko shook her head as Katetsu destroyed the body. I was too busy getting ambushed by another one of these losers. I see, if that is the case then it's most likely that Kurabi-sensei and my teammates have the same problem. Samui paused before looking at Anko. Could you go and help Naruto-ku-san, while I find my sensei and teammates? Samui tried covering up her slip-up from using the affectionate suffix on Naruto's name, and while the two other chunin did not hear it, Anko caught it easily. Well, it seems my favorite Gaki is getting even more female attention, Anko chuckled within the confines of her mind. Kukuku, looks like I have something more to tease him with. She opened her mouth to speak when another voice caught their attention. Yo, I'm pleased to see you're all fine, but it looks like we're missing Mr. 9. The group turned to see Kurabi, Omoi and Karui walking up to them. Kurabi-sensei, I'm glad to see you're alright. Naruto-san is with the daimyos, we need to lend him aid since I believe whoever is responsible for these three is there. Samui said, keeping her calm though on the inside she was worried. Do not fret, Mr. 9 is capable of handling himself just fine, Killer Bee said. Anko and I will go there to see what's up, in the meantime go around town and make sure the civilians are safe and sound. Samui looked like she wanted to argue for a second before she nodded, very well sensei. She turned to her teammates and the two Konoha Chunin, let's go and make sure there were no civilian casualties. The four nodded to her and took off, meanwhile Bee and Anko left for the building where the daimyos and Naruto were in. The Raijin no Ken snapped up to block Naruto's attack and redirect it. Always smirked as the famed blade made contact with the sword the blonde had. However, his smirk soon turned into a frown as he found that the blonde looked perfectly fine. How come you haven't been fried by the Raijin no Ken's power? Naruto smirked as he pulled his blade back and launched a series of short and fast strikes. You should know a good ninja never gives away his secrets, Aoi. Like he was going to let someone know his technique and actually have a chance of negating it. How stupid did this man think he was? Aoi grunted as he tried to block the attacks but found they were too numerous and had to jump back. However, Naruto had decided to give him no quarter and pressed his attack, launching strike after strike with attacks so fast they could only be seen as a blur. The Omegakure Jonin was unable to keep up with the blonde's speed and ended up getting several cuts along his arms. The attacks continued until he finally managed to lock the blonde's blade against the Raijin, however all that did was tell Naruto he needed to use another weapon. That weapon being his head, which he smashed into the aim ninja, causing him to stumble back. He glared at the blonde before going on the offensive, aiming a slash at Naruto's head. The blonde frowned as he blocked the rather sloppy attack. Keeping only one hand on the blade, Naruto moved their intermingled weapons and then used his other hand to punch Aoi in the face, grinning as he heard the satisfying crunch of hitting the man's nose and breaking it. Aoi let out a short yelp of pain as he stumbled back. He held a hand to his nose, which was bleeding and he suspected, broken. You little shit. I'm gonna kill you. Naruto grinned, you say that like you think you actually stand a chance of killing me. His grin widened as Aoi started attacking him. Each slash was just as sloppy as the last. It seems you rely more on that blade than you do on your skills. I'm surprised you lasted as long as you have with such shitty ass abilities. Shut up. Aoi roared as he put all his strength into his next attack. Naruto sighed as he blocked the sloppy but somewhat powerful slash. As Aoi tried to push the blonde back, said blonde decided to show him what true physical prowess was. He gave a hard shove that sent Aoi stumbling back. Afterwards he came in with a swing of his sword. Aoi saw it coming and tried to block, but the power behind the attack was strong enough to send him flying out of the room. Turning back to the daimyos, Naruto grinned, sorry for the interruption. Continue on with your discussion while I take care of the fool with the umbrella. Naruto walked outside whistling a jaunty tune and had to hold in a laugh when he saw Aoi glaring at him. I'm sick and tired of playing games with you, now you die. Aoi grabbed his umbrella and leapt into the air, opening it up so he hovered above the blonde. Juro Senbon, shower. He pointed his umbrella at Naruto and several thousand Senbon needles shot out impaling the blonde. As the Senbon storm ended, Aoi laughed and landed on the ground. I told you you'd never beat me. None of you weak Konoha ninja could ever stand a chance against me. Are you sure about that? Aoi's eyes widened and he turned around to see the blonde he had just killed standing behind him. How did you survive? Aoi shouted hysterically. I saw you die. There's no way you could have survived. Naruto pointed over to where he had been killed. When Aoi turned his head he saw a log that was impaled with multiple Senbon. Where the hell did you find a log to kawaii me with? There are no logs in Tatsu no Kuni, everything is made of stone and concrete. Naruto shrugged, one must never underestimate the power of the log, for if you do then no matter the danger the log shall not answer your call. However, if you truly believe in the power of the log, then all you have to is call for its help and the good log shall hear your call and provide you for your escape. What the hell does that mean? It means what it means, the blonde replied mysteriously, cracking his neck, "and now that I have seen all of your techniques, I believe it's time to end this." Aoi did not get the chance to say anything or even open his mouth as the Naruto in front of him blurred out of focus before disappearing. Rasengan. Right as the shout was heard, Aoi felt as if something was grinding into his flesh and let out a scream of anguish. Naruto, who had appeared right in front of Aoi and grabbed onto his shoulder with one hand to hold him in place, ignored the blood and innards his jutsu was spraying over him as it continued grinding the man's stomach into paste. He gave one last push before letting go. The man was sent flying into a wall where he hit it with a loud squelch, before landing on the floor with a thud. Naruto. Naruto turned around to see Anko and Killer Bee jump down next to him. "What's up, Anko ne-chan, B?" Anko looked at Naruto's blood-soaked form and grinned. "Gaki is all that blood for me. You shouldn't have." Naruto rolled his eyes. "I don't even think that deserves a response." He turned around and walked over to Aoi's body with the two Jonin following him. "Hey, is that Rokusho Aoi?" asked Anko as she watched Naruto cut the man's head off and seal it into a scroll. "Yep," Naruto replied in a cheerful voice before burning the body. "It is, and since I'm the one who kicked his ass, I get his bounty." Afterwards Naruto picked up the Raijin no Ken and sealed it into one of the many storage seals on his arm. "Hey, is that the famed lightning blade, the one that your Nadaime Hokage made?" asked Kurabi. "Yeah. Aoi stole it before he left the village," Naruto grunted as he stood back up. He looked over at the pair and grinned. "Why don't you guys go see if the daimyos are alright? I need to take a shower and wash this blood off before it starts to reek." "Whatever, Gaki, I think all that blood suits you," Anko teased. "You would think so, you bloodthirsty psycho," Naruto shot back. Anko just smiled. "You know you love me. Well, it looks like this is goodbye and see ya again, Mr. 9. It was several days after the battle, and during that time the two daimyos had finally come to an agreement. It seemed that the attack on one of their lives was enough to get their asses into gear, and they had pushed forth a treaty rather quickly after that. The only problem the ninja had were dealing with the samurai that had come a little after the battle. Anko and B had been forced to give a report to one of the generals since it was in their territory. Needless to say, the two had not taken well to that, even if they had done it. In the end, Naruto grinned. "I suppose it is, but you know this ain't the last time you'll hear my rhymes." Kurabi grinned as he heard his new Jinchuriki Bud's rhyme. While not as good as his own, if he did say so himself, was still nice to see someone who appreciated rap. The two of them bumped fists before the blonde became serious for a moment. "Hey, do you think you could do me a favor?" "Of course I can, if it be within my power I would do it right this hour." Nodding, Naruto reached into his pocket and pulled out a letter. "Give this to Yugi-chan for me. I wasn't able to get her address during the Chunin exams for obvious reasons, but I was hoping to keep in touch with her in some way." Kurabi nodded. "Don't worry about a thing, you know I'll help you and the kitten with your fling." Naruto blushed a bit before blinking as Samui stepped in front of him. "Can I help you, Samui-chan?" Samui looked around her to see everyone was looking at the pair. She hid her blush for a moment before leaning in and giving him a quick kiss on the cheek. "I hope to see you again, Naruto-kun." "Is it just me, or does he seem to get all the good attention from women?" Azuma whispered in his partner's ear. "I know what you mean. First he gets to spend time with that Suna chick. And I hear he was friendly with that Yugito girl they keep talking about as well. Now he seems to be getting close to this girl." Katetsu shook his head and mumbled a "lucky bastard" under his breath. "I can't help but feel slightly jealous of him," Azuma continued. "I mean, look at the size of her rack." Unfortunately, it seemed he had not been quiet enough as Samui looked over at him and glared, causing the man to pale a little and take a step back. Naruto held a hand up to his cheek for a moment, with his mouth open in an "oh" of surprise. It only lasted for a second before he gave her a somewhat dopey-looking grin. "I'll definitely see you again, that's a promise, Datbeo." He blinked before muttering, "Damn it, I thought I had gotten rid of that." Samui resisted the urge to giggle at Naruto's use of, well, whatever he just said as she moved back with her sensei. "Hey Blondie, the next time we meet you and I need to have a spar again." Karui shouted from where she stood. Naruto smirked at the redhead. "Sure, just don't feel too bad when I kick your ass again." Karui turned red with anger and started shouting about how she would kick his ass back to the age of the Raikudo Sennin and that he would never be able to beat her the next time they sparred. However, the blonde Konoha shinobi just laughed it off as everyone finished saying their goodbyes. And after that we finished escorting Daimyo-sama home. Anko finished her report to Tsunade. Said blonde woman sighed as she took another swig of sake, which she had brought out midway through the explanation, having felt an intense need to drink in order to assuage the coming headache. She then turned her attention to Naruto. You know, I somehow get the feeling this is your fault. My fault? Naruto tilted his head in confusion. How is this my fault? It's not like I wished for that pansy-ass Aoi to come and attack us. It's your fault because more than half the assignments I send you on end up turning into a disaster. We were lucky that both daimyos were impressed with how you handled Aoi enough to overlook this little mishap. However, we were also forced to pay damages for the building since it was our responsibility to make sure situations like this would not happen. Anko snickered. I have to agree with boss lady here, Gaki. You're a magnet for troublesome shit. Naruto glared at her before turning back to Tsunade, but you can't blame that on me. Naruto felt the need to defend himself. It's not my fault that Murphy's Law loves to fuck with me. Blame the person who made the thrice damned law. Besides, it's not like you didn't also gain something important out of this. Naruto unsealed the Raijin no Ken and tossed it to Tsunade. The blonde Hokage caught the hilt and looked at it for several long minutes. Various emotions played across her face during that time before she smiled. I suppose you're right, brat. And I would like to thank you for retrieving this for me. The Raijin is a family heirloom and means a lot to me. She looked at it for a moment longer before throwing it back to Naruto. Therefore I feel it's only right that I let you have it. Naruto caught the blade and fumbled with it for a second due to his surprise. He looked up at Tsunade with a slightly dumb expression. You're seriously giving this to me? Just like that. Tsunade smirked. It's better than letting the blade collect dust, isn't it? That sword was meant to be used, not sit on a stand. And I can't think of it going into better hands. Naruto smiled and actually had to wipe a small tear that threatened to fall from his eyes. Her giving this blade to him was a sign of her faith in his ability to become a great Hokage. Now he had two objects that belonged to a Hokage in his possession. Thanks Ba-chan, this really does mean a lot to me. Tsunade smiled. You're welcome, brat. Now why don't you two get out of here? Anko grinned as she grabbed Naruto by the arm. Come on, Gaki. It's dango time. But we had dango every time we were in Tatsu no Kuni, Naruto complained as he was dragged out the door. Let's go get some ramen. Hell no. Dango is way better than that cheap crap. Don't diss on the ramen Ne-chan, crazy ass psycho Jonin or not, I will shove my foot so far up your ass you won't be able to shit for months. Huh. You talk a big game but I'd like to see. Tsunade sighed and shook her head as the two bickering voices disappeared. Honestly, those two were two sides of the same cone. There was a moment of silence as she sat there before saying, so what have you got for me? For a moment it seemed as if she was speaking to thin air. However, a few seconds later the air near her window shimmered and Jiraiya appeared. Is that always gonna be the first thing that comes out of your mouth every time you see me? No. Hi Jiraiya-kun, I missed you. Or, oh Jiraiya-kun, I was so worried when you were gone, let me show you how much by. Do you want take a one-way trip on Tsunade Airlines aka my fists? The busty blonde threatened. Jiraiya sighed. Alright. I haven't been able to find out much. Orochimaru is being a slippery little snake. I was unable to get any information about him except that he seems to be constantly on the move despite his injuries. Jiraiya paused before giving in some personal input. I doubt he's given up on Sasuke yet, so you may want to keep an eye on the boy as much as possible. And Akatsuki? Asked Tsunade. Jiraiya sighed. Again, not much, they seem to still be searching for the Biju. That means that Naruto is not safe right now, there's no telling when they'll attempt to come after him again, and right now he's not ready to deal with a threat of that level. He's good, but he's not that good. So what are we going to do about this? Asked Tsunade. Well, I would like to take Naruto out of the village for a 3-year training trip. He was cut off from saying anything further by Tsunade. You want me to give you one of our best ninja in the village to take on a 3-year training trip? The blonde female Hokage looked at the white-haired man like he was stupid. Jiraiya, we still haven't fully recovered from the Chunin exam's invasion. There is no way I can just hand Naruto over. I need him for missions. Despite the ribbing she often gave him for the amount of random and violent situations he got into on his missions, he was still one of their better chunin and would most likely become a jonin within the next year. It's not like he won't go on any missions. Suheim, Jiraiya tried to defend himself. In fact, I expect you to send the two of us on some of missions so I can see more of what he's capable of and he can gain more experience. But you know I can't stay here to train him. I need to look after my spy network and I'm the only one capable of teaching to fight against S-rank ninja. Tsunade looked at Jiraiya for a moment before she sighed. I don't like this, Jiraiya, however I will allow it. But, she stopped the man in his tracks. The final decision will rest with Naruto. That's fine, Suheim, Jiraiya said. He was just about to go back to his research when Tsunade's voice interrupted him again. Are you going to tell him about his parents? The white-haired man turned back to Tsunade. You know Chunin is the rank Sarutobi-sensei wanted him to be before he told Naruto of his parents. Jiraiya sighed. Yeah, I suppose I'll tell him. If he goes with me on this training trip I'll tell him. If he doesn't, it will be up to you. Tsunade narrowed her eyes. You just don't want to inform him because you're afraid he'll kick your ass. Honestly, Tsunade, I feel guilty enough knowing I left him here, Jiraiya sighed. I don't want him to find out that I was supposed to be his godfather and left just so I could stew in my own misery. Tsunade's eyes softened a bit. You know I don't think he'll be too upset. I mean he might at first, but he'll get over it. He's a lot more mature than he acts. Yeah, I guess. Jiraiya paused for a moment before grinning. We'll talk about this later, I have research to do. He jumped about the window before Tsunade could throw something at him. It was a peaceful day for one ni Yugito in Kumogakure. She had just gotten back from a nice A-rank mission yesterday and had decided to sleep in today. The window was open, letting the sun stream through and warm her up while she was lying in bed wearing nothing but a large t-shirt that went past her thighs and panties. Despite being half asleep, the young blonde woman gave a grin as she stretched her body out, much like a cat would when sunbathing, before she sighed and snuggled deeper into the bed. Her peaceful morning was soon shattered as a figure jumped onto the window sill and began to rap, rather poorly, "Hey little kitten, guess who just got back from his mission?" Yugito jumped out of her bed as soon as she heard the loud and obnoxious rapping. "B." She hissed through clenched teeth as she stalked towards him. "What have I told you about coming in through my window?" "I don't remember, yo, but that's not important at the moment. What is that I have something for ya, Kitty-chan. I think you'll like it. It's from..." B did not get a chance to say anything else as Yugito made a very cat-like hiss and sent him flying out of the window with a Nibby-enhanced punch. God damn him. I was enjoying my cat nap. Stupid no good son of a... As Yugito began ranting in her mind as the scroll that B had taken out of his pocket rolled over to her feet. She paused mid-rant when it stopped in front of her and picked up and looked it over. Noticing her name on the front, she opened it up and saw that it was a letter. Dear Yugi-chan. Hey, I bet you didn't expect to hear from me since we never got each other's address or anything, huh? If you haven't figured out who this is yet, I'll give you a hint. It's the only other blonde Jinchuriki besides you, at least to the best of my knowledge, hee. Anyways, I was on a joint mission with some Kumo ninja and that Karabi character you told me about was one of them. You were right about the rapping, by the way. So I made this letter since I figured he would know where you lived. Yugito smiled as she continued reading the letter, which was really just Naruto telling her about how he got promoted and how he wished he was allowed to just skip Chunin rank and become a Jonin like her. The letter also asked how she was doing and that he missed her, causing the blonde woman's smile to widen a tad. At the bottom of this letter is something cool I was able to pilfer from Ero Sennin. He called it a Sakasa Kuchio's Fuian reverse summoning seal array. It's basically just an old school summoning array that was used before summoning contracts were created. When you channel chakra into the seal, it will summon a messenger toad. That way you can deliver letters to me and I'll be sure to get them. As the name states, the seal also works as a reverse summon for the messenger toad. So if you have that on hand and I have a message I want to send you, the toad will simply summon himself to your position. Pretty badass, right? I hope to hear from you soon. Uzumaki Naruto. Naruto-kun, Yugito grinned as she finished reading the letter. Yawned quite the young man you managed to bag, kitten. Nibbies yawned as she spoke, and Yugito got the impression the large cat was stretching herself out. I know, Yugito replied as she went over to the small desk in her room and grabbed a blank scroll and some ink. Naruto opened the door to his apartment and closed it as he heaved a sigh. He had finally managed to get away from Anko, who had wanted to commemorate their first mission together by getting completely wasted. Afterwards he had been forced to escort her home, and if he had not managed to Kawarimi with a kage bunshin when she passed out, would have ended suffering the same fate he had during the 1-month training period before the finals of the Chunin exams. Though his kage bunshin had suffered that fate and it caused a bit of a problem for the blonde when it dispelled. He shook his head and made his way to his bedroom. As he shed his clothes, Naruto's hand went to the necklaces he had on. More specifically the one he had gotten on his recent mission. It was a near replica of both Haku's and the Shodai's necklace, except instead of being turquoise or a light green, it was a deep blue and did not have a snowflake surrounding it. The daimyo of Kiba no Kuni had given it to him as a thank you and to be rid of what he thought was a curse, since Aoi was apparently after the necklace, and it had not been the first time he had people try to kill simply so they could get their hands on it. He absently wondered if these necklaces held some kind of connection, and if they did, what? Dispelling the thought, Naruto sunk onto his bed and closed his eyes, bringing himself into his mindscape. The next thing Naruto knew was he was laying on the bed in Kyuubi's hut while she sat near the edge of the bed with her tails in her lap and looking at him with an amused expression. Q-chan. Welcome back, Naruto-kun, Kyuubi greeted with a smile, even though Naruto could not see it with his eyes closed. You seem tired. Naruto cracked an eye open as he looked over at Kyuubi and gave her a small grin. Well, I'm tired of all these boring-ass missions anyways. Life's getting too monotonous, I need some excitement to spice it up. He paused for a moment. Though this last mission wasn't bad, I got a hot date, I got to beat the shit out of some guy, got the bounty of the guy the first beat the shit out of, and got 2 swords, one of which belonged to the Nadaime Hokage. Yep, definitely a good mission this time. He never noticed the narrowing of Kyuubi's eyes or the way her lips became thin lines, especially since the look was gone before he could notice. Oh, am I not exciting enough? Asked Kyuubi in a mock-hurt voice. Naruto just rolled his eyes. You know what I mean, Q-chan. The missions they have me doing, while kind of exciting, are for the most part boring. This last one was actually the most exciting one I've had in a long time, and even then that Aoi guy was a pansy. I can't believe someone as weak as him was able to wield the Raijin no Ken. He reminded me a lot of that Mizuki person, Kyuubi hummed in thought. Chances are he tricked some poor naive genin into stealing it for him. Maybe he told them they would be allowed to become genin if they did that for him. Hardy har har, Naruto glared at Kyuubi as she gave him a cheeky grin. He set his head back down on the pillow that was under it. You're so damn lucky I'm comfortable and you're the most powerful demon in existence, or I would kick your ass. Kyuubi grinned mischievously. Ah, but I am the most powerful demon in existence, so there is really nothing you can do. Naruto grumbled a bit before falling silent. For a while he just listened to the breathing he and Kyuubi were doing. Finally he asked a question he had been curious about. Hey Q-chan. Do you have a name other than Kyuubi? When the demoness looked at him oddly, he elaborated, it just seems like Kyuubi is more of a title than anything. Kyuubi hummed for a moment. I suppose it is both my title and my name. You have to understand, when I would pose as nobility I went by many names. Thousands even. I do not even remember all of the names I have gone by in my lifetime. She paused for a moment and began to move along the bed. Naruto looked over when he felt the bed shift and saw Kyuubi laying down on the other side of the bed, getting herself comfortable before continuing her story. I suppose if I were to have a name, it would be Kyoto, the name given to me by the people who raised me when I first gained a human form. So you can't remember the thousands of names you've gone by, but that one you can. Sentimental much? Asked Naruto with a grin. Don't be ridiculous, Kyuubi scoffed. They were humans, I am not, and while they could be considered the closest thing to a family I have had, those facts won't change. There is no point in being sentimental about things like that. They served their purpose, though I do have a certain fondness for the name as it was my first. Would you like me to call you that? Kyuubi looked down and noticed Naruto was giving her an intent look. She gave an uncaring shrug. You can call me whatever you want. Personally, I don't really care about names, those are something you humans give to others. Unlike Kyoto, Kyuubi reflects exactly who and what I am. Naruto sighed. I suppose Q-chan will do for now then. Kyuubi shrugged her shoulders as if to say, whatever you'd like, before looking back up at the ceiling. The rest of their time within the seal it was relatively silent with only a smattering of conversation between them. It was several hours later when Naruto was brought out of his mindscape by a knock at the door. Grumbling he made his way to front door and opened it to see a bare-masked Anbu standing there. Does Ba-chan need me for something, Kuma-san? Yes, Hokage-sama wishes to speak with you about something, Kuma replied. Naruto nodded. Tell her I'll be there in a minute, I just need to get ready. The bare-masked Anbu member nodded and disappeared within a shunshin. You called Ba-chan? Naruto shouted as he entered Tsunade's office, ducking under a paperweight sent his way. Tsunade glared at him for a second before getting down to business. Yes, I did, brat. Or to be more accurate, he did. Naruto looked to where Tsunade was pointing and saw the air shimmer to reveal Jiraiya, Arrow Sennin. What are you doing here? I thought you would be peeping at the hot springs for your next book or something. Jiraiya crossed his arm. Still a disrespectful brat, I see. I called you here because I have some important information that has to do with you, as well as an offer to train you. That took Naruto by a bit of surprise. Train me? That's right, Gaki. You remember what I've told you about Akatsuki? Naruto nodded. It seems they're still searching for the other Biju and their hosts. Now I don't really know what this means for you, but it is possible they may make the attempt again. And since they've already infiltrated Konoha once already. Naruto frowned, so this means there is a chance they'll attack me within Konoha's walls. When he saw Jiraiya nod he grinned, so I'm guessing there's a reason you actually had to call me in to tell me this, otherwise you would have just popped up in my house and said I'm going to train you. Got it in one, Gaki, Jiraiya smirked before getting serious. Because of my spy network I can't stay in the village. If I'm going to train you, we need to leave the village for a certain amount of time. Naruto narrowed his eyes as he saw where this was going, and how long is a certain amount of time? 3 years, Tsunade answered before Jiraiya. No, Naruto shook his head. There is no way I'm leaving for 3 years. You can get any of those thoughts out of your head right now, I have no interest in being gone that long. Be reasonable, Gaki, Jiraiya said. I can't stay here to train you, but you need to be trained by someone who is strong enough to take on S-ranked ninja. The only people in this village who are capable of that are myself and Tsunade. And you're no medical ninja. I'm not putting off my career for 3 years so I can go gallivanting with your perverted ass Arrow Sennin. Naruto crossed his arms as if say his decision was final. Your career won't be put on hold for this, Naruto, Tsunade interrupted, getting the blonde to look at her. You and Jiraiya will be doing missions outside of the village to gain experience while he teaches you. Jiraiya is going to send me regular reports on your progress during these missions, and if you do well enough I will promote you to Jonin upon your return. What about my friends? Asked Naruto. I'll be leaving for 3 years, I don't want to be away from them for that long. An image of Tenten popped into his head when he said that, but he shook thoughts of her away and refocused his attention on the 2 others in the room. Jiraiya shrugged. Sometimes a ninja will be called away for a long time like this, Gaki. You can't be with them all the time. And besides, if you stay here you're likely to be a danger to those around you. What would happen if you went on a mission with a squad and Akatsuki showed up? Naruto winced at that and Jiraiya tried to drive his point home. This is not only the best way to get stronger, but also the best way to protect your friends. I know, Naruto closed his eyes as he thought about what he should do. He really did not want to leave his friends, but he understood that he needed to be stronger if he wanted to beat the Akatsuki. If he was not strong enough, not only would he be captured, but who knows what would happen to his friends if they got caught in the crossfire. I think you should go. Q-chan. If you leave it means I will also be able to teach you some of the more destructive techniques I can't teach here. After a few minutes Naruto sighed. If I go with you, when will we leave? We'll be leaving tomorrow. Naruto frowned. That doesn't give me much time to say goodbye. Jiraiya shrugged. We need to get started now. And I have to meet people from my spy network soon, as it is I've stayed here as long as I can. Alright, I'll pack my things after I say goodbye to my friends. Naruto frowned before shaking his head. I'll see you tomorrow, Arrow Sennin. Ba-chan. As the 2 watched Naruto leave, Tsunade turned to Jiraiya. I hope you know what you are doing. Jiraiya gave his busty blonde teammate a grin. Don't worry, I know what I'm doing. Well, I'll see you tomorrow, Haim. I've got to get in some research since I won't have as much time for it as I like. Tsunade's eye twitched as she watched Jiraiya go, damned pervert. Tenten flipped another page of her magazine as she tried to stave off her boredom. Her team had just gotten back from a B-rank mission where they had to fight some bandits and a low-level missing ninja a few days ago. Now that she was back and her sensei had given their team time off so they could fan their flames of youth, she had nothing to do other than train and man her dad's shop. Since it was Sunday, there were not many customers coming in, and the few who did were too busy to stay and talk. Needless to say, she was bored out of her mind. Thankfully, a chime at the door sounded, signifying that someone had entered her shop. Hello. Welcome to Higurashi Weapons Shop where we, Naruto-kun. Tenten smiled as she saw that it was her friend who had entered. Hey Ten-chan. No missions today. Naruto walked into the store as Tenten got up from the stool she had been sitting on. Tenten shook her head. No, we just got back from one a few days ago and Guy-sensei gave us the week off to fan our flames of youth. She put up quotation marks when she said that. So what's up? I haven't seen you for a while. I just got back from a mission yesterday, escort mission to Tatsu no Kuni, Naruto replied. The blonde looked at her and grinned as he pulled out a scroll and handed it to her. I got a little something for you there. Tenten blinked for a few moments as she looked at the scroll. She unrolled it and saw that it was a basic storage scroll. After a few seconds she unsealed the contents and had to hold in a gasp when the item, or in this case items, revealed themselves. It was a set of silver kunai. The blades were curved and about 3 inches longer than standard kunai. Along the blade was an intricate design of a traditional Japanese-style dragon. The ring at the end of the kunai was studded with rubies along the outer edges. Altogether they were beautiful works of art. At least, they were to a weapon fanatic like Tenten. It took nearly 10 minutes before the stunned silent weapon user could respond. And when she did, it was not with words since she still could not speak. Naruto soon found himself in the near-death grip of Tenten as she gave him what was sometimes referred to as the squeeze of life. Why it was called that when Naruto felt like he was dying was something he would never understand. Ten-chan, can't breathe. Tenten seemed to snap out of her stupor as she looked at Naruto and found that he was beginning to turn blue from lack of oxygen. She let out an eep and dropped him, letting the blonde fall to the floor and gasp for breath. Okamai, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to. It's okay. Naruto gasped as he held up a hand, making her stop her extremely fast-paced apology. The blonde took a second to get his breath back before standing up. I take it from that, hug means you like the gift. Oh yes. I absolutely love it. Tenten squealed, and Naruto was reminded of one of the Thames fangirls for a second. Oh, it's an amazing gift. Where did you get it? I got it on my last mission to Tatsu no Kuni, Naruto replied. I was doing some shopping on my off time when I found them and I thought to myself, you know, I bet Tenten would give her kidney for weapons like these, so I got them. Tenten placed a hand on her shoulder and rubbed the back of her neck with a light blush on her face. He, I guess you know me too well. So is that the only reason you came here? To give me this beautiful present? Naruto smiled for a moment before sighing. Well, this was the part where I was going to ask you if you wanted to catch a movie with me, however I'm afraid I won't be able to do that. Why not? Tent tilted her head to the side as a sign of confusion. Naruto shifted uncomfortably, because I'm going on a 3-year training trip with Ero Sennin. What? Asked Tenten, not quite sure she had heard him correctly. I'm going to be leaving Konoha for 3 years to train with Ero Sennin. Because of a certain threat that he's found out about. He wants to train me so I can fight better, but he can't stay here due to his spy network. Tenten's shoulders slumped a bit. So you're leaving? Yes, Naruto frowned as he saw Tenten's depressed expression. You know, this won't be the last time we see each other or anything. I'll be back in 3 years. Yeah, I guess you're right. Tenten gave him a smile as she tried not to let how horrible she felt at knowing Naruto was leaving. You're going to keep in touch at least, right? She asked after a while, giving him a potent glare. Knowing what she was doing, Naruto just grinned. You know I will. You'd better. Tenten held her glare for a second more before hugging him. Thankfully it was not a death grip like her last hug. I'm gonna miss you. Naruto sighed as he wrapped his arms around and placed his chin on her head. I'll miss you too, Ten-chan. They stayed like that for several minutes before Tenten looked up at Naruto. blue eyes met brown as the bun-haired weapons user began to bring her head closer to his. Almost out of instinct, Naruto followed suit and brought his head down. Their lips were just about to touch when a cough interrupted them. I hope you have a good reason for getting so close to my daughter. Recognizing the voice, Naruto shot backwards and turned to face Kato. Well, you see, it was only that it was. Ah. He noticed the glare he was receiving and sighed. You know what, fine. I'll just tell you what you want to hear, not like you're gonna listen to me anyways. I was telling her that I was leaving on a 3-year training trip and was hoping that this would make Tenten admit her deep-seated feelings of love for me, after which she would invite me upstairs and we would have hot passionate sex, sir. By the end of Naruto's explanation, both Tenten and Kato were red. Though, Tenten's was from utter embarrassment and Kato simply looked like he was about to blow a gasket. That was the wrong thing to say to me, Gaki. Kato threw a kunai at Naruto that hit him right between the eyes, showing just where Tenten had learned her own weapon throwing skills from. However, Naruto burst into smoke seconds later and Eloge appeared in his place. I'll see you later, Ten-chan. Tenten and her father turned just in time to see Naruto running out the door. To-san, Tenten said in a quiet voice that immediately put her father on guard. Yes, Tenten? Asked Kato. I hope you're ready to be used as target practice. Tenten pulled out several kunai and began launching them at her dad, who ran into the forge and locked the door. The next day, Naruto waited as Jiraiya gave their papers to the Chunin gate guards, who were surprisingly not Katetsu and Izumo this time. He looked at the village that he was leaving, the home he would not see for 3 years. He had already said goodbye to his friends, not wanting there to be any fanfare when he left. Come on, Gaki. It's time to go. Jiraiya hiked up his scroll and began walking out of the village. Naruto followed a few seconds later, pausing on top of a hill that overlooked the village. The blonde took one last look at his home before running to catch up with his sensei. Chapter 36, Wind. Fuck. The curse along with several more loud sounds of vulgarity rang throughout a small clearing along the borders of Hai no Kuni and Kei's no Kuni. Ha 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 ha. It's not funny, Aro Sennin. Naruto scowled at his sensei, who was rolling on the ground and holding his stomach. The blonde Uzumaki made an attempt to stand, before falling back on his ass and hissing in pain as he felt his calf muscles stitching themselves back together. I've been working on this thing for 4 months now and I still can't seem to get it right. Jiraiya gasped and wheezed several times as he finally regained his composure. You're right, brat, it's not funny. The white-haired man's facial features twitched several times before he burst out laughing again. It's hilarious. Watching you smash yourself against rocks, trees and other objects while trying to get this technique down is some of the finest entertainment I've ever had. The only thing that can beat watching you kill your brain cells via bashing your head into solid objects is having a harem of beautiful women dance for me. Laugh it up, Aro Sennin, Naruto said with a scowl. He sat on the ground for several long moments before testing out his re-healed limbs, standing on them and moving them around. He sighed before grumbling a bit, we'll see who gets the last laugh. He was already plotting his revenge against his sensei for laughing at him and not helping him complete this technique. All he needed was some rope, a marker, some honey, and a banana. Yes, soon Jiraiya would regret laughing at Uzumaki Naruto. You know, you still haven't told me what this technique of yours is. Jiraiya commented as he watched his student exercise his re-healed calves. I might be able to help if you actually tell me what it is you're trying to do. Naruto looked at his sensei before sitting down. I'm working on a speed technique similar to the Shunshin, except this one is supposed to be entirely combat-oriented. What I do is channel chakra, or Yuki in my case, to the bottom of my feet. After that I expel the Yuki in short bursts that would theoretically propel me from short distances instantaneously. Jiraiya seemed to hum in thought as he looked at his student. So what's the problem? That's just it. The blonde gave a cry of frustration. There isn't a problem, the theory is completely sound. Yet for whatever reason whenever I go past 3 steps my calf gets torn to shreds, and even getting the technique ready takes at least 3 seconds, which is 3 seconds too long in combat. It was the most frustrating situation he had ever been in. No matter how hard he tried, how much chakra he used, nothing seemed to change. He could as much or as little as chakra as he could, but the technique always ended the same way, the muscles in his calves getting torn apart. Naruto-kun. Naruto blinked several times as he heard Kyuubi's voice come across through the seal. Yes? Asked the whisker-faced blonde. It may have something to do with the fact that you're not using chakra, but Yuki. Kyuubi gave what amounted to a mental tail flick as she began her explanation. Because Yuki is a lot more unstable than chakra, it's most likely causing an influx when you try and send it out in bursts. Naruto frowned. So then what should I do? I can't just give up on this technique. I'm not saying you should. Kyuubi replied mildly. But you may need to get better Yuki control, or even think about adding the elements to the technique as a counterbalance for the instability of your Yuki. Naruto sighed. You may be onto something, thanks Q-chan. Within the seal, Kyuubi gave a grin. You're welcome. Oi, Gaki. Naruto blinked as he found Jiraiya waving a hand in front of his face. Sorry Ero Sennin. The blonde rubbed the back of his head and gave a sheepish grin. Jiraiya rolled his eyes. Having a dialogue with your inner vixen. He gave his student a lecherous grin. Can it, you old perv? Naruto glared at the man. Jiraiya tended to tease Naruto a lot about the various women who seemed to come into the blonde's life, but he always seemed to have a particular fondness of making fun of his relationship with Kyuubi. Naruto thought it was because the white-haired man liked the thought of having a hot woman in his head. Such a flatterer, Naruto-kun. Kyuubi spoke in a seductive purr as she heard the passing thoughts. Not you too, Naruto grumbled a bit. The red-haired demoness had been getting worse with her blatant flirting. He wasn't sure that was the right word, since while they got along much better ever since his near-death experience at the hands of Orochimaru, they still didn't seem to quite click. Of course, that could be because he wasn't all that comfortable with her when she got too close. While he would admit that she was starting to grow on him, there were some times when he just didn't want to deal with her. Not that it stopped her from doing whatever she wanted regardless of how comfortable he was with her. Naruto still had yet to determine just what he felt about her blatant use of her body to tease him when they were in the seal, and her near-continual use of sexual innuendo at the most inappropriate of times. Grunting, the blonde stood up and glared at his sensei. I suggest you get that mind of yours out of the gutter, or I'll let Q-chan use you as a chew toy. Jiraiya just laughed his student's ire off like he had every other time the whiskered chunin had made comments like that. The blonde had threatened him with similar threats before, but they both knew such a thing was impossible. I take it she was giving you some help with this technique you're working on. Naruto stood up and nodded. She thinks my Yuki is simply too chaotic. It may flow more smoothly and be easier for me to control, but its nature points towards jutsu and techniques that require more power than finesse. Jiraiya stood up and patted him on the shoulders. Well, just keep working on it, I'm sure you'll get it eventually. Now get yourself ready to go, the next town is a few hours away and I want to get there by nightfall. So you can find a tavern and get drunk and hook up with some woman that you have to pay for, Ero Sennin. Naruto grinned when he saw the man glare. Snickering, the blonde went over to a tree where his shirt and other items were. He grabbed the towel hanging next to his shirt and wiped the sweat off his body. His thoughts soon began to stray as he wondered where they were heading. The air was getting much drier than what he was used to. Oi, Gaki, quit daydreaming. Naruto snapped himself out of his small fugue and put his shirt on before putting the necklaces he had around his neck. Yeah, quit your bitching, Ero Sennin. He turned around and was forced to move into a light jog to catch up with his sensei. You know you never told me where we're headed next. I didn't, did I? Jiraiya asked with a wry grin. Said grin widened when he saw Naruto scowl at him. While the boy was actually pretty patient, he hated dealing with people who tended to speak in cryptic words that never gave any information. So where are we going? Asked Naruto after a several-minute silence. We're going to Suna, Jiraiya stated. Suna. Naruto tilted his head to the side and frowned. What exactly are we going there for? To complete your wind training, of course, Jiraiya grinned. You haven't completed all of the exercises yet, have you? Naruto frowned. I don't know. After the leaf-cutting exercises I heard we have to cut a waterfall, but I never got the opportunity to do so since I would need a place to stand and I don't have the carpentry skills to build a bridge. The blonde looked forward and shrugged. I actually started creating my own exercises after I managed to cut a leaf. Jiraiya raised an eyebrow at his student. Oh, what kind of exercises have you created? The man got a shrug. All kinds really, anything I could think of that wind can do. Jiraiya waited for Naruto to say more, but when the boy remained silent he decided they should start moving. He took to the trees with Naruto following mere seconds later. The pair made their way to the next town and got a room to stay for the night. Like always, Jiraiya had gone off to a tavern to find some female company while Naruto just decided to let his body rest while he went into the seal and spent his time with Kyuubi. "Hello Naruto-kun," Kyuubi said with a grin as the blonde entered her room through the door that led outside. She only got a glimpse of the trees beyond as he shut the door. A part of her wondered what if being outside in his mind would be similar to the real world. It still made her angry to think of how she was stuck in this house for all eternity. Her only saving grace was that her container was nothing if not amusing. "Did you come for more stories of my past?" That was really the only reason he came to the seal. When she had asked, or more like teased him about it, Naruto had told her that he just wanted to get to know her better since all he knew were from books. Kyuubi wasn't sure what she thought about that, but considering he was one of only two people she could talk to, and she held a strong hatred of the other one, she found herself oddly grateful for his presence. "Not unless you want to tell me," Naruto said as he sat down at the edge of her bed. "Oh." Kyuubi raised an eyebrow, "Then what did you want to talk about?" "Whatever we feel like, I guess," Naruto said. "Since being in the seal is the same thing as going to sleep, I figured it would be better to spend time with you and maybe learn something useful than sleep." "So you want to spend time with me? How flattering," said Kyuubi, batting her eyelashes at him. Naruto rolled his eyes. "Whatever, so what exactly do you do when I'm not here?" "You mean besides sleep?" asked Kyuubi, her tone sarcastic. "Not much, it's not like I can go outside, and even if I did, I'm not sure what there is to do in your mind anyways." "What did you do before being sealed?" "Traveled," Kyuubi said. "I was constantly traveling. I learned early on that it was never good for me to stay in one place for too long. Most of the people I enslaved could only stand being under my charms for so long before they became brain dead. I would usually stay for several dozen years, sometimes a lifetime depending on what I was doing at the time. If I was pretending to be the daughter of a noble, I would usually stay a lifetime before quietly disappearing. Most of the time, I would find a rich merchant and place them under my charms, then leave when they got older." Naruto nodded. Her answer was more or less what he expected by now. He was surprised she was so open about her past, but with no way of escaping the seal he figured she just found it easier to be honest and upfront with him. It was something he was appreciative of since it at least meant she was being honest. "How come you could never stay around for too long?" asked Naruto. "You mean aside from the fact that people would get curious if I didn't die when I was supposed to?" asked Kyuubi, reminding the blonde that the people she disguised herself as were human. "If I stayed longer than a natural human lived, people would get suspicious. I couldn't afford to let other people know I was immortal, or other countries would come to the one I was staying at in order to acquire me and find out how I could live for so long." "I suppose that makes sense," Naruto said. He felt slightly embarrassed that he hadn't thought of that. It also made him wonder if he would be forced to do that as well, constantly travel to keep people from becoming suspicious of him, never being allowed to truly settle down, always having to remain on guard from people wanting to use him for their own purposes. Whoever said they wanted to be immortal obviously didn't realize how much it sucked. He hadn't even been alive for 14 years and just thinking about the problems that came with it were enough to worry him. "Something wrong, Naruto?" asked Kyuubi, raising an eyebrow as the blonde went silent and pensive. "Huh?" Naruto looked up to see the redhead staring at him. "No, I was just thinking about something." Kyuubi raised an eyebrow at the blonde, getting him to look away, but she shrugged any curiosity away for the moment. She didn't particularly care what he was thinking, so in the end it didn't matter. "So what else did you want to know?" she asked, getting the blonde shinobi back on track as he started asking questions about her life before being sealed. The next morning the apprentice-teacher pair were off again, making their way through the forest and then cutting through the desert. When they reached the gates of Suna it was around midday. They were stopped by a pair of guards who asked for their IDs and passports. When Jiraiya gave them a letter bearing the Hokage's seal, the two immediately escorted the two Konoha ninja to the cage tower. As soon as they were directed inside, Naruto saw Baki sitting at the desk. "Yo, Baki-san, how are you?" Baki looked up and grinned a little when he saw who it was. Nice to see you again Naruto-san, though I did not expect to see you so soon. The man looked over at Jiraiya. And Jiraiya-sama, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. Jiraiya gave the man an easy grin, same to you. I have a letter from the Hokage. He gave Baki the letter bearing the Hokage's seal. Baki unrolled the seal and frowned when he saw what was on it. I see, so the Hokage wants us to help Naruto-san here finish his wind training. That's the gist of it. Jiraiya nodded. As you know, wind users are rare in Konoha. In fact we only have the Gaki here, and Sarutobi Asuma. I see, Baki set the scroll down. I have no problems with this, even were we not getting on better terms with Konoha I would probably do this since Naruto helped Gaara so much. I'll just need to find someone suited to the task, but that should only take an hour or so. Oh yeah, speaking of Gaara, you should have Ero Sennin look at his seal. Naruto spoke excitedly. He should be able to do something about Gaara's sleeping problem better than my seals can. Would you be willing to do that Jiraiya-sama? Asked Baki. Jiraiya looked thoughtful before shrugging. I suppose I could do that. Since I'm not a wind user I can't exactly help the Gaki with his training. Alright, I'll take a look at the seal while Naruto begins his training. Thank you. Baki bowed his head slightly in a sign of respect. Right now Gaara is on a mission so we'll have to wait until he comes back. Until then how about I have someone escort you to a hotel? That will be fine. Jiraiya said as an Anko appeared in one corner of the room. And escorted them outside. Naruto plopped down on the couch in the hotel room that Baki had given him and Jiraiya. It was a very basic 2-bedroom hotel room with a kitchen, living room combination and 2 bathrooms. The young blonde had kind of hoped he would be able to go and live with Gaara, Temari and Kankuro. He was a little disappointed that he couldn't but understood that it might not be the best idea with Jiraiya. The teasing he was likely to get from the man would likely send him and Temari over the edge. Speaking of, he looked over to see said man already hopping out of the window. Probably going to a tavern to get drunk and pay some woman to hang off of him. Well that is the only way he can get anything from a woman. Naruto chuckled a bit as Kyuubi's voice resounded from his mind. That's probably true, I doubt the old perv could actually get a woman without money. The blonde heard the soft alto laughter he had come to know vary within the past few months since the Chunin exams. He always found it so odd that the Kyuubi, the most powerful Biju in existence could have such a pleasant-sounding laugh. Why thank you. Naruto blushed a bit as he realized she heard him. It always bothered him when he caught himself thinking about something like that, mainly because he was paranoid that Kyuubi was somehow putting those thoughts in his head. Damn it, am I still transmitting? Yes, Kyuubi said, with the changes to the Shiki Fuian that came from when Orochimaru tried to place his own seal on him, Naruto had been finding it very difficult to keep things from her. He could still do it, but if he wasn't careful, Kyuubi would pick up on even the most random of thoughts from him. Personally I don't even see how any female could stand to be with that pervert and his obnoxiously loud voice. Kyuubi felt a small shudder run down her tails. That man's laugh simply disturbed her on many levels with how obnoxious it was. Picking up on her thoughts Naruto snickered. Would you rather listen to that, or have to deal with the sunset genjutsu of youth? Kyuubi's shudders became even more pronounced as the horrible mental images entered her mind. Don't ever remind me of that. In all my centuries of life I have never seen something as disturbing as that damned genjutsu. It is pretty creepy. I bet they would be great at torture and interrogation. Just let them start hugging and we'd have our prisoners talking in no time. Now there's an idea. A knock at the door interrupted their conversation. Naruto stood up and walked over to the door, opening it to find. Hello Naruto-kun. Temari smiled at the blonde. Mari-chan. Naruto looked at the blonde girl for a moment, wondering why she was here before realizing. You're here to help me with my wind training. Temari's grin widened. You've got it cutie. Naruto groaned. That damned word will never leave me. So, are you here to get started, or is there another reason? If possible Temari's grin widened, and Naruto had a very bad feeling. How long do you plan on dragging me around? Asked Naruto as Temari, with his arm securely gripped with her own pulled him around Suna. They had spent nearly 2 hours walking around, talking and had just finished lunch. Now they were making their way towards one of the districts he had not seen before. It looked like a factory of some kind. Are you that tired of me Naruto-kun? Tamari asked with a small pout, bringing out her lower lip as her eyes began to tear. Despite knowing instinctively that her tears were completely fake, Naruto felt himself begin to panic. Of course not, Mari-chan. He reassured the girl who had a chibi version of herself giving the victory sign in her mind. I was just wondering if we were going to get to training, or if there was something specific you wanted to do instead of just walking around. There are a lot of things I would like for us to do, Tamari purred. The way she said this put Naruto on guard. But I figured I should show you where you'll be training. We're training here? Asked Naruto, looking over at the large buildings. They didn't look any different from any other building, they were the same cylindrical, beige structures that the city was made of. However, these particular buildings were massive, literally 2 to 3 times larger than any other building in Suna. He absently wondered how he had missed these on his last visit. Not here per se, Tamari replied cryptically as they walked to one of the buildings. But this place leads to where we will. They both walked inside one of the buildings and Naruto's first thought that this was some kind of factory seemed to be spot on. The interior of the place was littered with pipes and machinery that he had never seen before. Along one side of the building were large cylindrical tanks. What is this place for? Asked Naruto curiously. These buildings are where we gain 1/3 of our water supply, Tamari said. Those machines over there have large pipelines that lead to several underground canals are located and pump water up from them. You said only 1/3, the blonde male commented, where do you get the rest? Import it from other nations of course, Tamari answered as if the question was obvious, and it was, how else would they get something aside getting it from another country? The fan user began walking further into the building, now come on. Naruto followed his companion as she led him over to a steel plate with a handle on it, an entrance of some kind. His belief was proven correct when Tamari had him help her in opening the entrance. They climbed down using a ladder that was located on one side and found themselves in a tunnel. It looked unnatural due to how smooth the walls were and Naruto had to wonder how it was made. These tunnels were cut out using wind chakra, Tamari answered when he voiced his question. She smirked at him, our boast about having the best wind users in the world wasn't an exaggeration, you know. She led him through the tunnel, there was only one path so it was rather easy to follow. Up ahead Naruto noticed one of the large pipes was also following the tunnel, he could see moisture dripping off of it and realized that the tunnel was actually damp. It was not something he expected to find in Suna, given how hot and dry it remained all year. When they reached the end of the tunnel Naruto could not help but let a gasp escape him. Seeing and hearing his reaction, Tamari smirked, welcome to where you'll be training, Naruto-kun. 1 month later, unknown location. Are you positive of this information Kabuto-kun? Asked Orochimaru as he grit his teeth. The pain he was in was getting more and more unbearable as time passed. He knew that if he did not choose a body soon he would die. Kabuto pushed up his glasses and hid his worry of his master's condition as he gave his report. Yes it is. This information was given to us by Danzo so I assume it is correct. I see, Orochimaru knew that Danzo was not to be trusted, however the man still had his uses and the snake Sanin knew that for the moment he still had his uses to Danzo. So, Uzumaki has gone on a training trip with my old teammate Jiraiya. Kukuku, this may be the opportunity we are looking for. With that blasted brat gone and Konoha's shinobi still stretched too thin from our invasion there is no one among them who is a match for our shinobi. Shall I send the Sound 4 to get him? Kabuto asked. No, they still have a use for me that I plan on using right now. I want you to go with Kimimaro and Gurren. Gurren. Kabuto actually looked surprised. Are you sure that is a wise idea Orochimaru-sama? We both avert dislike towards me. Kukuku, she is also my second most loyal servant after you Kabuto-kun. Orochimaru chuckled, truthfully he found the girl's rivalry with his second-in-command amusing. She will do as asked. Kabuto looked unsure for a second before he bowed, it shall be done Orochimaru-sama. It was just another day in Konoha for Team 7 as they walked out of the missions building, having just finished their quota of D-rank missions for the day. Even after several months since the invasion there were still a lot more D ranks than before, and genin teams like theirs, 8 and 10 were the ones who were usually forced to take them. Kakashi did not even bother to look up from his book as spoke, now that all of our D rank missions are done I'm giving you guys the day off today. Sakura looked over at her sensei. Kakashi-sensei, I was wondering, where is Naruto? I haven't seen him on our team ever since the Chunin exams. Kakashi looked up from his book to see his two remaining squad members looking at him in interest. He thought about whether or not he should tell them, but figured out they would learn soon enough from one of the blonde's friends anyways. He left with Jiraiya-sama 2 days ago to go on a training trip. So you won't see him for 3 years. Anyways, you guys are dismissed. As he watched Kakashi disappear in a puff of smoke, Uchiha Sasuke clenched his fists. Why is the Dobi getting special training when I'm the one who needs to become stronger? Why is it that ever since I joined this damn team he's been getting stronger while I've just been standing still? These thoughts that his mind was taking him was infuriating him even more. Ever since he had joined Team 7, Naruto had made him feel inferior at every turn. And now the Dobi was getting trained by one of the strongest ninja in the village. Sasuke-kun? Asked Sakura, unsure of whether she should say anything as she noticed Sasuke's clenched fists bleeding. What? Sasuke growled as he glared at the pink-haired girl. His Sharingan eyes active and giving him a frightening and hateful appearance. Sakura took a step back for a moment before steeling herself. I was just wondering if you were alright. You seem well, she trailed off at the end, not sure what she should say to him. I'm fine. Sasuke grunted as he spun on his heel and walked away. For once Sakura did not follow him and try to get a date. The look he had cast her was frightening. She knew Sasuke had always been cold, to her and everyone else. But that look just now had been so filled with hate-resentment that for the first time in her life Sakura had felt scared of her crush. She stared after where he had stalked off before slowly turning and making her way to her own house. What happened to you, Sasuke-kun? As Sasuke made his way into his clan compound, he glared at everything in sight. All of it, this entire was a reminder of how his brother had killed his clan and how he was still not strong enough to avenge them. Every day he would look at this place, a place that was once so full of life, and was now a graveyard, reminded him of his still constant failure. He used this place and the memories that came with it to fuel his hatred of Itachi. However, even after all this time, even though his hatred burned even more strongly than it ever had, it still wasn't enough. It was like no matter what he did, he never got any stronger. Meanwhile Itachi was getting farther and farther away, and pretty soon he would never get his revenge. Sasuke opened the door to his clan compound and made his way to the kitchen so he could grab a bite to eat before getting to back his training. However, when he came back from the kitchen he was shocked to find someone else in his house. Hello Sasuke-kun, it's been a while since we've last seen each other, no? Kabuto asked with a small smile. How did you get into my house? Sasuke asked wearily. He was not sure what was going on, but he remembered who this was. Kabuto. You remembered my name. Kabuto gave a pleasant smile that seemed more mocking than anything. I am so pleased to know you didn't forget me. You didn't answer the question, Sasuke ground out. His left hand went into his kunai pouch. Something was off here. He could feel something different about the white-haired genin before him. Some kind of change had come over him, and it was unsettling to Sasuke. Do you still desire power? Asked Kabuto, hiding his smile of victory when he saw Sasuke stiffen. If you want, my master can give you power. Your master? Asked Sasuke, narrowing his eyes at who he thought was still just a genin. If your master trained someone as weak as you, then I doubt I need them. He was stopped from saying anything further when Kabuto disappeared and reappeared at his side, fast enough that Sasuke had not even seen him, his smile still in place. I assure I am far better than I let others believe. Kabuto turned away. However, if you do not want Orochimaru-sama to help you with your goals of getting strong enough to kill your brother. Wait, Sasuke said as Kabuto began to walk out of his house. When Orochimaru's right-hand man stopped and turned around, Sasuke started again. He can offer me the power I want. Of course, Kabuto smiled. It seemed his master was right, the boy could not think of anything other than power. Orochimaru-sama has asked me to tell you that he is willing to train you, and give you all the power that Konoha has denied you. Why? Sasuke asked, his eyes narrowing in suspicion. Who can say? Kabuto shrugged. I can't speak for Orochimaru-sama, maybe you just remind him of himself, or perhaps he wants your help and is willing to give you what you want so he gets what he wants. There was no real need to beat around the bush with Sasuke. Kabuto would not tell him that Orochimaru wanted to possess his body, but what he said was close enough to the truth. Orochimaru did want something from the boy after all. Even though my cursed seal has been sealed. A hand went to Sasuke's neck, where the cursed seal could be seen, and the counter seal around it clearly visible. Yes, I heard about that. Kabuto paused. You're fortunate that your cursed seal is only in its first stage. Once we upgrade your seal to its stage 2 form, the other seal will be overpowered. When Sasuke did not say anything, Kabuto began sinking into the ground again. I'll give you a few days to think about it. If you wish for the power Orochimaru-sama can give you, then come find me 2 miles outside of the North Gate in 1 week. Sasuke watched as the white-haired traitor disappeared, his thoughts centered on the man's offer. 1 week later. It was nearing the end of the week-long time frame that Kabuto had given Sasuke. During that time the raven-haired Avenger had actually thought about what he wanted to do for a long time. Surprisingly, coming up with the answer was harder than he thought. Every time he had thought of taking up Orochimaru on his offer, his mind would replay images of his time on Team 7. Even if he refused to admit it to anyone else but himself, he had more fun being on Team 7 than he had for several years. His time with Kakashi, Naruto and even Sakura had been more pleasant than he would care to let on. Team 7 had become something of a family to him. In the end he had been forced to ask himself, what did he want in life? Did he want to stay here? In a place where he could be happy? A place where he had friends? Or at least as close to friends as was possible for him? Or did he want to go to the person who could offer him power? Enough power to crush Itachi. Did he still want to go after his brother and avenge his clan? He looked at the Team 7 photo on his desk. Kakashi was in the back, book noticeably absent and an eye smile on his face. Sakura was in the middle giving the camera the peace sign and had a rather large smile on her face. Naruto stood on her left, offering a small, content grin. And he was on the right, glaring at Naruto. He stared at the picture as he thought about what decision he should make. He placed the photo face down. He grabbed his backpack. And left. Because in the end, he was an Avenger. Sasuke-kun. Sasuke looked up to see Haruno Sakura standing in front of him. He should have known that she would know what he was up to. The girl had some kind of bloodhound sense. Why are you prowling around in the middle of the night? He asked without stopping, passing her by as she stared at the ground. This is the only exit in the village that's not guarded at night, Sakura said, getting Sasuke to stop. I knew if you were going to leave, all I would have to do was wait here. Get out of here and go back to sleep, Sakura, Sasuke said. Sakura began to sniff and cry as she turned her head to look at him. Why won't you say anything to me? Why do you always keep so quiet? You never say a single word to me. Sasuke sighed, not even sure why he was talking to her. Maybe it was because even if she was annoying, she was still his teammate and friend. I told you, I don't need your help, don't try to look after me. As Sasuke began to walk again, Sakura looked down and gave a sad smile as a few tears dropped from her chin and onto the ground. No matter what I do, you'll always hate me, won't you? You remember, don't you? Sasuke did not turn around, but he did stop moving. When we became genin, the day our 3-man squad was assigned, Sakura remembered, after beating on Naruto again, she had found Sasuke on his way back to the classroom. The first time we were here, by ourselves, you were so mad at me. She remembered how she had berated Naruto in front of Sasuke for being an idiot because he did not have any parents. Flashback. Can you believe that Baka Naruto? He's always causing problems for me and trying to mess things up. It's because he wasn't raised right. He just says whatever pops into his head because he doesn't know what it's like to be punished on a personal level. It's all because he doesn't have parents. You think think about it. He doesn't have anyone to answer to, never has, which is why he's become so selfish. If I tried to do the things he gets away with, I would be grounded for life, so of course I don't do them. Without parents, it's the only possible outcome that one becomes an idiot. Alone. What? Being scolded by parents is nothing. You can't possibly compare it. Even Naruto knows what can't be escaped in this world. Emptiness. Isolation. What are you saying? You're annoying. Flashback end. Sasuke did remember that conversation. It had been one of the few times he had realized that there was someone who might understand at least some of his pain. Not that he was going to let Sakura know that, I don't remember that. Sakura looked wide-eyed for a moment, before she looked back down. Ha ha ha. Yeah, I guess you're right, that was all in the past huh. That's when it all began though, you, me and Naruto, along with Kakashi-sensei. Sakura smiled as she remembered some of the things they had done. We did all sorts of missions, just the four of us. It was painful and difficult at times, even with that though, I still enjoyed it. She looked up at the young Uchiha Avenger's back. I know all about your past Sasuke, but even if you get your revenge, it won't bring anyone happiness, not even you Sasuke, nor me. Sasuke smirked as his hair cast a shadow that covered his eyes. I know that already. However, I'm different from all of you, I can't be following the same path as you guys. Up until recently we've done everything as a group. But there are some things that I can only accomplish by myself that I must accomplish by myself. Deep inside my heart I've already decided on revenge, that is the only reason I live. I'll never be like you or Naruto. Sakura bit her lip as more tears began to form in her eyes. Do you really want to go back to being alone? You told me how painful it was to be alone. Right now I know you're in pain. I may have friends and family, but if you were to leave, Sakura closed her eyes as more tears began streaming down her face. If you were to leave, I would be just as alone as you. Sasuke did not even turn around to look at her. In the end she didn't matter. All that did was him getting enough power to kill Itachi. From here on out, we all begin new paths. Sakura grit her teeth, I love you. If you were to stay with me, I would make sure you never regretted a single moment of it. Because every day we'd do something fun, we'd be happy, I swear. I would do anything for you. So please, just stay with me. I'll even help you get your revenge. Sakura sniffed as she tried to stop crying. Even though I don't know what I could do, but I'll try my best to do something. So please, stay with me, or take me with you if you can't stay here. Sasuke stayed still for several seconds before turning around with a smirk on his face. You really are annoying. Sakura's eyes widened and she looked up just in time to see him turn around. Don't leave. If you do I'll scream. Her eyes widened when Sasuke disappeared. Sakura, the voice came from behind her, thank you. Her eyes widened even more, before she felt a quick prick on her neck and everything went black. Naruto and 500 clones were standing atop a bridge made of sandstone as they all worked on cutting shapes out of the waterfall. It had been over a month since Naruto had been here. During the first 2 weeks he had managed to cut the waterfall in half. After that his training would have been complete. However, like always, Naruto was determined to take his elemental training to the next level, doing the same exercises he had done with the leaf exercise. For a moment the blonde reflected on how odd it was to see a waterfall in the middle of a desert, much less the 10 waterfalls that were around him. He was in an underground cavern under the desert on the outskirts of Suna. Apparently this place was fed by several rivers that had tunneled underground and traveled along Suna as a naturally made canal. He remembered the first time Temari had led him here and how amazed he had been to see something like this in the middle of the desert. The waterfall he was on now was the largest one, spanning about 50 feet in width. He and the clones combined their wind-natured chakra and began creating a shape, working together as the water from the fall began to gain a line in it that curved along and moved. At the same time he kept a constant stream of wind chakra to areas he had already cut. The line grew larger and larger as the shape began to get more and more complex, eventually taking the shape of the Konoha leaf symbol. He could not do anything more complex than that right now, but he was getting better with time. Sighing, he wiped off the sweat and water that had gotten on his face when a voice spoke up behind him. You know, it still amazes me, seeing the ways you take a simple exercise and run with it. Naruto and his clones all stopped and turned around. The original gave Temari a grin. What can I say, Mari-chan, I'm just awesome like that. Temari smirked at her fellow blonde before changing it into a pout. You know you've been here for several hours. I think it's time you did something else. Naruto's grin widened slightly. You mean do something with you? At Temari's blush the whiskered blonde chuckled. He had not just trained during the month. He and Temari had gone out on many dates during his time here. Flashback. Naruto and Temari entered the expensive restaurant arm in arm as the pair followed the waitress, who was dressed as a traditional geisha, led them to one of the booths that lined the walls. The pair seated themselves and Naruto looked over at Temari. You know, when you said to dress nicely, I still didn't expect to come to a place as Temari's male counterpart paused as he searched for the right word. Extravagant as this. Temari gave Naruto a smirk, the benefits of being a child of the former Cage. The Cage used to own this place, and when he died those rights were transferred to me. Naruto noticed how she refused to call the former leader of her village father, but knew where her bitterness came from, and so he chose not to comment on it. So you own this place? He asked instead, eyeing the beautifully crafted statues, the luxurious-looking carpet and the professional musician that was playing over in one corner for background music. The place made every restaurant he had eaten in pale in comparison. Yep, Temari chirped as she picked up a menu. They came over with 2 glasses and a bottle of wine, filling them as the pair gave their order. Temari smiled to herself before looking over at the blonde and couldn't keep the small giggle from escaping her throat as she saw him tugging at his shirt. Of course he noticed this right away and scowled at her. It's not funny. It is too funny, Temari snickered at her fellow blonde. You can kick Gaara's ass even when he's in Tanuki form. You managed to cut a waterfall in just over 2 weeks, and you don't break a sweat even with the threats you're going to have to face in your life. She gave him a smirk, yet you can't even wear a set of nice formal clothing. Naruto's scowl became more pronounced. I've never had to wear anything like this. They feel so confining and stuffy. Well, I think you look good in them, Temari complimented. She really did believe he looked good in the clothes he was wearing, a dark rust-orange hakama with a dark blue kimono that almost looked black in the lighting. She gave him another smile and couldn't but add, besides, you should be lucky I let you add some orange into your ensemble. I suppose, Naruto sighed as his shoulders slumped. There was no use griping about it now. He perked up a second later and looked over at Temari. You look like you're used to this kind of thing. Of course I am, Temari gestured to herself. Between my brothers and I was always the one they sent on any kind of diplomatic mission. You know that. Naturally, a lot of the times I would eat at places like this, or in the palaces that daimyos and other rich nobles lived. That sounds so boring, Naruto grimaced. I would hate having to deal with a bunch of rich snobs. I've only met a few daimyos, and most of them are fat, greedy old farts. He remembered the daimyos from Kiba and Ta no Kuni with a grimace. Shaking the thought away, he gave her a look of sympathy. Being such a beautiful girl, I don't know how you would be able to deal with people like that. Temari blushed at being called beautiful. Well, I usually just ignored the ones that tried to come onto me. If that didn't work, I would just tell them off, though it wasn't always easy. I'm surprised you didn't just bash their heads off with your fan. Naruto gave her his foxy grin. I would have if doing that wouldn't have hurt Suna's reputation, Temari fired back. Then you must have far more restraint than others, Naruto said. Conversation ceased for a while after that as the food came, and the two began to eat. Afterwards, Naruto had taken the girl for a walk around Suna and they had stayed up late to look at the stars before heading off to bed. Flashback end. That was not all he had done either. He and Temari had sparred quite often. Naruto had also got in some good spars with Gaara, though they had been forced to take their sparring outside of the village training grounds. He had to admit that had been a good idea, as the first time the two had sparred they had not only destroyed an entire training ground, by burying it under sand and having that sand turned to glass, but the amount of noise and explosions had caused a mass panic from the citizens thinking they were under attack. Speaking of Gaara, Jiraiya had managed to help him with his Biju problem. The process had been a pretty big hassle and Jiraiya had actually required Naruto's help in keeping the Shukaku from escaping. Flashback. Okay, Naruto, as soon as I begin the process of replacing Gaara's seal, I need you to produce a suppression seal on him and keep the Shukaku from escaping, Jiraiya said as he stared at the seal that Gaara had on the lower section of his back. He honestly could not believe that someone would actually place a mere 2-pronged seal elemental seal and expect it to hold a being as powerful as a Biju, even if said Biju was the weakest of the bunch. Naruto nodded his head. This was a standard procedure for resealing or fixing seals with powerful entities of any kind involved, or so Jiraiya had told him. Got it, Aro Sennin. Jiraiya cracked his knuckles before producing his specialized ink and brush. Alright Gaara, we're going to begin now. I warn you, this will hurt. Gaara, who was lying in the center of a large seal array that had been prepared beforehand to help contain the demonic Yuki, merely gave a small nod. I am aware of that. However, pain is a small price to pay for being able to sleep after 12 years of going without. Right, Jiraiya dipped his brush in the ink before he began to write a complex-looking seal over the one that held the shukaku. Naruto watched as the white-haired man deftly and quickly drew the seals along Gaara, starting around the original seal and spreading out from there as it increased in complexity. Naruto couldn't help but notice that compared to Jiraiya's work, the two-pronged seal placed on his friend looked like it had been done by a toddler in comparison. It was here that Naruto saw just how talented his sensei really was. Oh sure, he knew the man was strong, the blonde still had yet to land a single hit on Jiraiya even after all of their spars. But that was to be expected, having nearly 40 years more experience than Naruto. However, seeing the man making a seal that he could not make heads or tails of really brought the fact that Jiraiya really was not just some perverted lecher. When the seal was finally complete, Jiraiya placed a hand in the center of it and began to channel some chakra into it. Kurama Fuiant Destabilization Seal. All of the seals on and around Gaara soon began to move into the two-pronged seal, writhing their way up the redhead as they glowed a light blue. The seal holding the biju had soon began to hiss and steam as it started to dissolve. At that same time, Gaara began to thrash and yell as agony ripped through his body. Ah! Get started, Gaki! Jiraiya shouted, knocking the blonde from his fascination at watching the seal in action. Right. Naruto created 6 Kage Bunshin, all which were reinforced by the blonde consciously subverting more chakra to them. They all went up to Gaara and held him down while he thrashed in pain. In the meantime, Naruto's hand began to glow a light purple as he used a technique he had created called Chikara Chosaku, chakra writing, which was an ability he came up with to supplement his increasing skills in Fuinjutsu. The technique allowed Naruto to use his Yuki to write on solid surfaces of any kind. Due to being half-demon, Naruto's Yuki was more potent than the human equivalent and was what allowed him to use this ability, though the seals would only last for 15 minutes until they would fade. He soon began to write a seal on Gaara's stomach, being as quick as he could while still maintaining perfect precision with his writing. Sweat began to trickle down the blonde's face as a muddy brown chakra began to bubble up from Gaara, starting from the stomach and spreading out. Naruto did his best to block off the blood-curdling screams as he worked, and was supremely grateful he and Jiraiya had the foresight to put up a powerful sound barrier before starting. There was no telling what Temari would do if she was able to hear her little brother's screams. Come on, Naruto blinked the sweat out of his eyes as he finished the last few lines to the seal array before channeling some chakra into it. Oni Fukaku Fuiant Demonic Suppression Seal. The seal began to glow a light blue and the brown chakra stopped its movement, before getting stuck onto Gaara's lower back, Arrow Sennin. Jiraiya hurried up and began to work on drawing a 4-pronged seal on the redhead's stomach, using the careful and skillful precision that came from decades upon decades of writing seals. Because Naruto's ability only allowed a seal to last 15 minutes, the two were forced to constantly switch places so the blonde could reapply the suppression seal each time it dissolved. They would have found a better way to do this, however, when creating a high-level seal such as the one Jiraiya was making, they could not actually place a seal on Gaara or they risked the two seals getting crossbred, which would cause the seal to break and the shukaku to explode out of Gaara, an event that would likely kill everyone in the process. However, with Naruto's ability that would not be a problem, as all they would have to do was wait until the seal dissolved before activating the new containment seal. It was 3 hours later that Jiraiya finally finished writing out the seal, just in time as the last suppression seal Naruto had placed on Gaara dissolved. Hake Fuiant 4-pronged seal. Jiraiya took a step back after he finished activating the seal and he and his student watched as the seal glowed a bright blue. Gaara's movements soon ceased and the redhead became so still that were it not for the light up and down movement of the chest that signified the Ikibi's Jinchuriki was still breathing, Naruto might have thought he was dead. Jiraiya moved over to the redhead as Naruto's Kage Bunshins dispelled, now that he was no longer thrashing about, and checked over the seal. "How's it look?" asked Naruto as he came up to the other side and looked at the new seal on Gaara's stomach. It was very similar to his own, with a large spiral hiding the actual kanji for the seal. The only difference between his and Gaara's was that his seal had 8 squiggly lines on the outside surrounding the seal, while his fellow Jinchurikis had 4. The sealing was a complete success. Jiraiya said after triple checking his work. The older male sighed in relief and slumped down a bit. It looks like we did it, and Kami, I hope to never do it again. Naruto snickered at Jiraiya's exhausted expression, tired from just a little sealing arrow senin. You must be getting old. Jiraiya scowled at his student and began to go off on one of his rants about how he never got any respect from the youth of today. Flashback end. That had been an experience he did not want to repeat, and he hadn't even done the hard part of the sealing. I suppose we can go somewhere, provided your little brother doesn't go all. Hurt my sister and I'll bury you under 12 feet of sand. On me again, Naruto replied, remembering the first time he and Gaara had sparred and the red-haired Jinchuriki had given him that threat. Temari grinned, he hasn't done that for a while, it will be fine. Naruto's just shook his head, no, but I'm expecting him to start up again any moment now. Temari would have said something, however a few seconds later Gaara appeared between them in a whirl of sand. I hate to break up your flirting at the moment, but Baki wanted us at the Cage Tower. Both Naruto and Temari blushed as Gaara described of their conversation as flirting in such a monotone way. Honestly, how he could just say something like that without any inflection in his voice and not even a twitch of his face was disconcerting. You wanted to see us, Baki-sensei? Asked Temari as she, Naruto and Gaara entered the room. The three noticed that Kankuro was already there. Yes, Baki looked at them and everyone, even Naruto could see a few stress lines signifying something happened. We have just received a request from Konoha, asking us to send some backup for a squad of ninja that are going after one of their own who either left or was captured. Baki looked at the three of them. You four are to head towards Konoha and assist a squad with Chunin Nara Shikamaru in command with the retrieval of Uchiha Sasuke. Thank you for watching. Please remember to like and subscribe and have a great day.